All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are here for Palantir's AIP conference. This one is exciting. We've got some pretty crazy stock action that we're seeing right now. And I just came back from somewhere, so I didn't even know that the stock was moving the way it's moving. But it's moving, and it's moving pretty aggressively. Alex Karp currently is on Bloomberg. I didn't even get a chance to see his latest interview, but he is there, so I'll be checking that out in a little bit. We should be starting in about 5 minutes. The stock is moving. There's a lot of momentum right now on the stock. We hit $15.22 this morning. Did not expect that, quite frankly. I saw it when it was at 15.04, and then I saw the 52-week highs, and I was like, oh, we hit 15.22. So whether it's AI mania or craze, or honestly, Nvidia's pumping up right now and Tesla's at 205. So a lot of the AI momentum is still there. And that's why I think Palantir is getting some of the love from it. The stock market is rewarding a company like Palantir. Today's conference is going to be very important to see if we can capitalize on that momentum. Everything in today's conference matters because we have to justify that the hype is worth it. We have to justify that this product truly is revolutionary. And then this product is going to be doing things that, quite frankly, most people can never imagine. And as a result of that, that's what's going to make this really, really exciting to see kind of how this plays out. Thank you for everybody being here. Let me just set up a couple of things on my side, and then we'll keep this going. Starting in about 4 minutes, I'm going to pull up the link. Where is this link? So, all right, here we go. Here's the link right here, AIPCon June 2023. We got 1,700 people waiting in Palantir's list. That's amazing. That's awesome. Passion Planet, let's go amid. This event is big for long-term holders. Let's go. Thank you for the $10 super chat. This is a very, very, very big event. I cannot express how serious this event is. Andrew, let's go. So excited. Palantir Vision tweeting quotes from the Bloomberg interview as well. That's awesome. I didn't even catch the Bloomberg interview. For those that don't know, Andrew, would highly recommend checking him out on YouTube and Twitter. He is the head of content for dailypalantir.com. He's helping me out build out that website. So thank you to Andrew for being here. And we're going to have a lot of content to talk about because some of the stuff we're seeing today is going to be kind of crazy. Martin, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a channel member as well. Now that your name is in green, I can tell if you're a channel member. I just turned on memberships yesterday or like 2 days ago. So thank you for joining. Means a lot. Okay, so we got a Bloomberg interview. We're going to get to that. Let me pull up the stock very quickly just to see some momentum that we've got. Palantir stock is at $14.99 right now. The reason we're cracking through 15 is because the market is willing to give us the premium if we can live up to it. And a lot of other stocks are getting the same. I mean, who would have thought? Who would have thought? Forget 6 months ago, 6 weeks ago, that AI was going to be so enthralled within the very fabric of how high-frequency trading algorithms and institutional investors allocate capital in their portfolios. Who would have thought that that would lead to a massive retail rally on top of that? Because when stocks go up, retail FOMO's in. And now we get Palantir up year to date 130. Who would have thought that? I didn't. I wasn't. Look, I'm a pretty big bull. I didn't think that was going to happen. And I'm bullish on the company, not necessarily on the stock in the short term, because I think the stock will reflect the company, but the stock is up as well. Up 76% since last year, year to date 134. And this month, the stock is up almost 100%. So now AIPCon's got to deliver on sort of what we're doing. Yeah, chicken genius. Not all geniuses or chickens end up being that smart, I guess I'll just say. I mean, look, the dude made 100,000, but could you, if he had just waited, he would be up like 700-800 grand. If he had just waited like a week, bro. But he was swing trading it. And on a swing trade, you make your money, right? So I have nothing against that, but it's still kind of crazy. Oh, shoot. I just noticed something. We can add multiple items. Wow, I didn't know StreamYard has that. Okay, that's super cool. So let's see what happens. But he did make 100,000. It's just that, you know, if he just held on, if he actually believed in the company, it might have been a little bit more. So, all right, let's go to AIPCon. So here it goes. Now, what I'm going to be doing, if you just want to see the conference, be happy to go to Palantir's live stream. I'm going to be analyzing it while this happens. Okay, so I'm going to be pausing in between. I'm going to be listening. I'm not going to pause when Karp or Shyam speaks. I'm going to let them talk. But when the actual clients present, I will be listening and I will be pausing to give my thoughts on certain things that I think are important, interesting, I'm confused about, whatever it may be. Because I actually want to like do some analysis here. So if you just want to see the actual AIPCon, you can go to Palantir's YouTube. But if you want to hear a little bit of commentary during this conference to help you hopefully understand what we're listening to, then that will be my job here. Micro Rose is a good question. Admit, I saw one of your recent videos and said you are not a buyer at 14, and yet over a year ago you were a buyer at 20. What is the logic for that? Two things. Number one, my own ignorance about valuations. I was a little bit more novice, I would say, than I am now. A year and a half ago when I was buying Palantir at 20. It was in November 2021, and I didn't understand valuations at the time. Palantir could not deserve a $40 billion valuation when they were barely bringing in $1.5 billion in revenue. And that was my mistake. I've been honest about that. I think a lot of people ended up messing up in terms of valuation. Number two, the growth rate has stalled from 41% to 18%. So here's my thing, okay? Growth rate has come down. If AIP is the thing that reaccelerates massive growth, and let it not be a mistake, the market for AI is bananas. Every company, government organization in the world is trying to figure out how to use artificial intelligence to become a better organization. And on top of drug discovery, healthcare, there's a trillion different verticals literally that AI could be applied to. That reacceleration of growth could very well happen, and we could get 40, 50, 60% growth year over year. I do think it's possible, but we got to see if that happens. And if that does, then we're gonna see momentum and growth. And then this price is gonna be pretty cheap. All right, it is starting. Let's get into it. Let me make sure I shared my sound. Hold on. Share screen, share sound. Did I press it? Yeah, share sound. Okay. We're going to get into it. I think Karp's giving us a keynote and then Shyam, and then we're going to get into the actual client meetings. I'll be live the entire day, so get some food, get ready. We're going to be here for a while. I think there's like a couple 10-minute breaks in between. And we'll be analyzing everything that goes down. Seems like they're just showing a little preview thing, right? Can you please share the link to the live stream? Yeah, the link right here. I'll put it in the chat. If you guys want to watch just the link to the live stream, there it is. If you guys want to stay here, that's great. Davis, hey, Amit, Sasky Rhodes, we broke 15 today. We did indeed. We broke $15.22, $15.22. It's pretty crazy. Are you going to stream the AIP conference? Yes, Jeffrey. I'm streaming the AIP conference. Thank you to 500 people being here. This is a really exciting day for Palantir shareholders. We've got to see what they've got in store and what they are doing. As Andrew says, we are living through a pivotal moment in company's history. There is no sound, Benny. There is no sound. So there is no sound yet. Let me just make sure it's not on my end. There's no sound. Yeah, there's no sound. There's actually no sound. So this is they're just showing some slides right now. There is no audio. There is no audio. I can confirm there is no audio because I don't hear any audio on my side. So if I heard audio, you guys didn't hear audio, then it's my mistake. But I'm not hearing any audio. So this is just random stuff. Finally, Amit does an all-day stream. I've done 6-hour streams before. I've done them. It just hasn't been in a while. So now we're here. What's your thoughts on SMH? I don't actually know SMH. I'll look into them. SMH. What is SMH stock? SMH stock. Or is that's a Van X semiconductor ETF? Yeah, I don't no real thoughts on that. But I mean, semis right now, especially with how NVIDIA and AMD is doing, it's probably not the worst place to be in. How long is this? I think it's going to be about 3 hours. I think it's going to be 3 hours. We'll see. Arnie doesn't have audio either. Yeah, so this isn't, they're just not showing the audio right now. Again, this is going to be really, really important for a lot of reasons. And so it's going to be exciting to see. Now, the one request I have is please follow on Twitter. It's in the description. I just put it in the chat. I'm going to pin it in the chat. Please, 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 if you do anything today, SoFi is at 725. Wow. Congrats to SoFi shareholders, including myself. Please, please, please follow on the Twitter. That is the one thing I asked today. If you don't have a Twitter, make a Twitter because Elon's trying to save free speech and he needs more users. So if you don't have a Twitter, make a Twitter. There's a great Palantir community there. It takes 2 seconds to sign up. And please follow me there. And honestly, support free speech because if Elon didn't buy it, I don't know what would be going on right now. So please, that's the one request I have today is to follow on Twitter. And I'll pin that in the chat right now. All right, so they're just running through some slides. The Bloomberg interview I did not see. So I'm going to be excited to see the Bloomberg interview later. I did not get to see the Bloomberg interview at all yet. So from what I heard, people said Karp was killing it on the Bloomberg interview. Ditch the turtleneck and I'll follow on Twitter. Bro, the turtleneck is legit. I don't know what you're talking about. The turtleneck is like... I just figured out you could do this on StreamYard yesterday. This looks so cool. Because like the thing's like in a box and then I'm right here. It's kind of cooler than this. But I'll do this when the actual people come on. I think I bought these turtlenecks in 2018, like 6 for $10 each from like TJ Maxx or something. And they've been great ever since. I think, and you put a jacket on this, it becomes a vibe because then you got the turtleneck with the jacket. It becomes legit. Okay, so we're still waiting. They're still probably starting up. Almost every stock is green. Yeah, I haven't even had a chance to look at the entire market yet. So we'll check that out. Let me pin that message. The main thing I'm looking forward to is Cleveland Clinic. I want to know what they're doing with drug discovery and pharmaceuticals. I am really excited to see that. That one's going to be a very, very big one to me because I think Palantir is the most underrated healthcare startup on the planet. And so it's going to be exciting. My average was 15, so I broke even today for a little bit. Where am I at right now? We're at 1486, so I broke even just for a little bit. So it was nice. It was nice to see a little bit of green. Great to have you on a live stream during this session. Very curious. Yes, Sven, thank you for being here. Customer count is about to supply. Sachin was saying this last night. If we get a big daddy customer that's using Palantir's AIP, it could create a gold rush for a lot of other customers to end up using Palantir's AIP if, some of the big ones come out. Not to mention, they can sell AIP to the existing 340 clients they have. And the clients that are going to present at this conference today have used AIP over the past couple of months. And as a result of that, they're going to be able to give sort of a case study, but there's just so much opportunity. All right, here. Wow, there's a lot of people. Look at all those people excited about this event, bro. All of us are here. They're there. All right, we're starting.
Please welcome from Palantir, Sasha Spivak.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first ever AIPCon. We are so excited to have more than 150 unique organizations represented in this room alone, standing in the back. We have dozens of other customers in local viewing locations all around the US. We have customers hosting their own watch parties. And of course, we have those of you joining us on the live stream. We are so excited to unveil an overwhelming volume of new product today on the back of an announcement that Dr. Karp made just a few short weeks ago. But even more than that, we're excited to have our customers unveiling that themselves to you directly. We're continuously inspired by the pace of our customers, the ambition of our customers, and the energy that they bring to share their stories with you. So we hope that you take the stories you hear today, you're challenged by them, you're energized by them, and you run with them. So with that, allow me to please introduce Dr. Karp and Matt Babin.
Thank you, Sasha, and thank you everyone for joining. It's my pleasure to
There's
open up
Karp.
the day.
Let's see what he's got to say.
Conversation with Dr. Karp.
He looks great, by the way.
I'm only called Dr. Karp. Some of you guys weren't here, don't know this, but when we started, we had no revenue, we had no product, we had no investors. We were almost going out of business. The only thing anyone believed in was that I was a doctor. That's I kept trying to get rid of it, and then I realized, we got to have something they believe in, and so that's why I'm still Dr. Karp. But you can call me any four-letter word that you can say in public.
Perfect. I'll shorten it to Karp as we go. I wanted to start by asking you about the letter that was in the news a lot this week by the Center for AI Safety that said, paraphrasing, that mitigating the risk of extinction posed by AI technology should be treated as a global priority, the same as societal level risks like pandemics or nuclear war. And as the leader of a company that supported governments and private institutions through the pandemic, has been outspoken about the risks posed by the invasion of Ukraine on nuclear activity, how do you respond to that statement?
Well, I think it's great to be here. Thank you for the light softball question. You could get someone next year. we clearly person. So we've been involved in building systems in the classified environment, and in the last 5-6 years, systems that are involved in identifying targets using AI. AI in this context meant finding targets in very large spaces. So spaces the size of Texas, find this kind of person, and then a handoff. You find target. People assume that when you find a target that you would then automatically would just disappear. But in fact, what really happens is it's very hard to find these. You need on disparate kinds of data sets that are very large. And then there's a handoff mechanism where it's like, is the target, is the identified object next to a hospital? Is it an identified object next to children? Is the identified object actually an asset of ours? Is the identified object the idiot we want to not die? That there's sort of a lot of complicated things that involve that, and where what I think is, yes, these technologies are very dangerous, but our adversaries are even more dangerous, and that we, because of that, have no choice but to run headlong. What's interesting about a lot of these statements and what's going on in AI, which is mostly focused around the large language models, is that you really have different factions. You have a faction that is saying that it's hyper dangerous because right now you need very, very specialized technology, which I believe we provide, to make large language models really, really important in your enterprise so that you're not delivering a piece of poetry to your enterprise. It's like no one has time to deliver poetry. We need margins
Except Karp, because we love his
safety
poetry.
to be better. Generally understanding of our business, the knowledge of one part of our business to be transferred to another. These are things that large language models do exceedingly well with infrastructure that we'll be showing off today. And I don't want to take away from the things that are coming, but there's a lot of things we built that will allow you to do that are very valuable. So there's one part of that faction that is saying that because they're right, and these things are very dangerous. But they're often right, but it's like not also mentioning if we don't build it, our adversaries will, and that won't be very good for us when we have no rule of law. And I'm in a constant battle with my academic friends about this because they believe that in the absence of hard power, either being able to use AI now or essentially nuclear warheads, we would have a rule of law. We at Palantir believe that you need these weapons to enforce a rule of law. And that's our deeply held belief. And we've had that for 20 years, and it's cost us a lot. It's cost us investors because we wouldn't work in China or in Russia. It cost us, sometimes people didn't want to work at Palantir. But then you also have a coalition, and this is actually it's not related to people here, but in the defense establishment where we play a role, quite frankly, there are very few providers of software that's useful, and everyone else wants to have a debate about how dangerous they are. Let's just debate it and debate it and debate it, and we can implement these things in 5 years. It's like, and that we have to avoid. And yeah, again, my view, the view of our company is very dangerous, very valuable. One of the things I do really like about it, though, is that for commercial enterprises, it gives you the ability, if you're adaptive, to outmaneuver everyone else. And the industries that are going to do that most effectively are largely going to be in America, because American industry and its executives are just very, very pragmatic. If I can change the margins of my business, I can understand my business better, I can implement the cultural and knowledge advantages I have because I developed a way of building my business over the last 20 years better than anyone else in the world, I'm going to do it tomorrow. And that's just an enormous advantage. And that's quite frankly why this audience is packed. And so,
yes,
and
sir.
I think that's something we have to run towards, and that's what we're doing as a company.
You mentioned pragmatism and the implementation of software there. And I think maybe, I started with a question around extinction because I'm a pessimistic person. If you're trained as an economist and you work as an intel officer, you spend a lot of your time thinking of how things can go wrong. I think software engineers, by and large, are optimistic people. You're going to build something that doesn't exist for the first time.
Yeah, well, they're optimists in the long term and pessimists when you tell them what they should do.
I was going to say intransigent, but yeah. And then maybe the synthesis of those two things, I think, is realism here at Palantir. And the reason I've stayed here this long is we spend a lot of our time, I think, in that synthesis of taking the optimism of that software and putting it against the pessimism of these problems in the world. Where are you most excited about that combination?
Look,
and
our
ambition?
software that allows you to identify adversaries at a high level, and we constantly caution not to say much except for that the Ukrainians use our software, changed the course of history. Demonstratively, And software that, we built 20 years ago changed the course of Europe because we stopped terror attacks while protecting civil liberties. Software that we're now rolling out will change the trajectory of the US economy in a very positive direction. And I'm not, there are certainly flaws in the West, but we are the best group of countries and structures that this world has ever known. And we have now technologies that will allow us to lurch forward. And we have cultural and training biases in this country that are tech friendly, pragmatic, able to implement things, very high level of technical competence inside organizations built up over the last 5-10 years. Super a willingness to bring the best talent in the world. And that one of the things about large language models that is just really cool is that for our partners is it's like many of these things is horrifically unfair, but it's going to make places that are already strong, pragmatic, have specific ways of doing business that are quite valuable. It's going to allow those industries to lurch forward very, very, very quickly. And we haven't, I've been at this for 20 years. So without, like the products we built on, we built products for Intel, products for special forces, products on identifying adversaries. And none of them have the ability to transform a whole economy like this and put variability in the hands of very talented people, ethically, legally, safely. But the interesting thing also is that, and this is more academic, but we've been in the trenches. It's like one of these things, no one ever believed we cared about civil liberties, but we made a ton of money caring about civil liberties because you have certain architectural, from a technical perspective, civil liberties means you need a branching structure so that you can segment who sees what. You need access control so that you can verify who sees what. You need an ability to do that dynamically. You need an ability to impose what objects mean to each other. So what we call an ontology. You need ability to write against that where you only write against the segment part of your data. But now in the LLM context, you can think of that as just a way to process something that is moderately useful to very useful into something that is crazy valuable. Shyam's going to show you this in this concept, this thing we built called agents. But all that processing, all those things about like academic data protection, they're really just like taking an unrefined product, moving it into a refined product and making it deadly. And to see that something that looked philosophical became valuable in the anti-terror context is now deadly in the AI context and can help people transform their businesses very, very quickly within the context of how a business actually runs. So you have proprietary knowledge, you have data sets, you have things that are actually regulated, you have things that you do not want to share, you have some things that you would expose to a large language model and other things you wouldn't. You have areas where the large language model needs tooling. You have areas where it doesn't need tooling. You have areas where you can accept 80% accuracy and areas where you can't. You have specialized knowledge in your business that even you find it hard to articulate. Like, why is America and Silicon Valley and just in general, this culture so good at building enterprise software? I don't know how to articulate that, but it's very, very hard to explain our selection and building products but it works. But getting that specialized, how do you manufacture something very complicated that one company manufactures very well, but another company doesn't? How do you actually take all those insights and roll them against your business while being able to drill down into those insights so that you can make sure that the decisions being made are actually ones that you would support, not just ethically, but from a business perspective? And all that comes down to things that we've built that are actually in demand and that we don't have to convince people are valuable because they are just valuable. So that is super cool.
Yep. When you think of that transformation of the software through those gates and delivering that value, last month in Copenhagen, you were giving a talk, and I think you got a question which was, is the West ahead of adversaries in technology like this? And if so, how far ahead? How big is that lead? And you mentioned in your answer that yes, they're ahead, but the issue to worry
We're
about
ahead.
isn't other people catching you from behind. It's Western governments not being able to move as quickly and efficiently as they can. You talked about budget appropriations and programmatic things. For this room and most of our audience today that's in the private sector, what do you think that acceleration looks like on the commercial side and maintaining?
Well, again, I think what everyone in this room is going to do and what I think people have already done, and one of the coolest things I've ever seen in the history of Palantir is you go next door where these demos are and we're showing off our product, and we have current partners showing other partners how you do this. Like, it's this thing about software that was always true is it's all BS until you try it. It's like, you know, I was constantly asked, what makes Palantir different than these 5 other companies? I don't know. Go try all of us. It's like, it is just try. Why don't you have a payment strategy? Because I know our partners, future partners, are smart enough to pay us a lot of money if we create a lot of value.
That's facts.
How do I know it will work? Well, we can show you it working, and we can show you how valuable it is. And what it basically means in the government context, you have this problem globally that 98% of software spend goes to people building things by hand that take 5 years and maybe then take 10 years and then they take 20 years. And beyond that, that's just not how software is built at a world-class level. You can't have security if it's not a product. It's like, well, how are you? And it's very hard to do these things, but it's definitely not going to work. So, and this is not just America. This is everywhere. And then you have a lot of places, you know, one country doesn't want to buy from another country. And quite frankly, many of our allies have a problem that all the products come from America anyway that works. So like, how do you explain that? In a commercial context, it's very different. It's like, we have a problem. Palantir has, in the commercial context, multi-year, 10-year reputation for delivering very complicated systems that have worked across heterogeneous industries. Great. We're going to take it. They're making some pretty bold claims. You're going to say, great, if those bold claims are true, we want to see it. And then you go and test it. And then we enter into a relationship after you've gotten value. And the only thing I would say is this is kind of obvious. But where it's not obvious, we as a culture have to make it even more obvious, because on paper, AI sounds like it's very hard to know what will be valuable. And enterprises have very complicated internal technical challenges that are now being exposed. So one of the very advantageous things for us is AI will pen test your whole enterprise. You know, so you can use our products, but the stronger your enterprise, the more value you're going to get. So that's like, so you're going to see this, try it, get value, and then the next question is, well, how do I get even more value? And that's just a process that it's not theoretical. It just has to be tried and proven. Maybe we should go to questions.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's take some questions from the room.
All right, let's see what they're going to ask.
Or
Awesome.
we could just talk about
Extinction.
This is a big room.
There's always one person who has like 5 questions, so that person should ask one. Oh, we have our long-term advocate here. Friend, ask a question. Yeah, you. I don't know. Want to ask a question?
Okay, they probably should have. They should have prepared some questions before.
I'll ask one more while we. Okay, it worked.
Okay, there we go.
I didn't know you were looking directly at me, putting me on the spot. I'm representing one of these, but there's historically places in the world that have not had similar values, right, to the West or to the United States. And sometimes they're aligned, sometimes they're less aligned, right? And bringing something that delivers this kind of power and this kind of insight and efficacy into those markets, right? How does Palantir look like? Or how does Palantir look at that in terms of, like you're saying, bringing some of these Western values and the benefits that the way we think in the West give us this kind of advantage? How do you look at bringing some other places that might necessarily not always align with us, bringing those kinds of capabilities to bear to actually help us in the long term deliver the values that we really want everyone to share?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I've been asked this question a lot, and but I have I don't actually know the real answer now, because when you see what we're building with these agents, it's really scary. So it raises the threshold of where So the agent basically, Shyam will show you this, but it takes the output of an LLM, creates it in a hybrid algorithm, and allows you to run it passively, meaning all the time, against your whole enterprise. And depending on the quality of your security, you can segment, but it's still,
Wow.
you can see how that could be easily abused. And I do wonder if that should be sold to like local law enforcement. And so I don't know. In the past, we've always been like, I'm in no way a neocon, honestly. I just think we have the West, we have the core West, and we have allies, and we have customers all over the globe. And if they're on our side, I think we should cut them slack. And if they're not, but slack doesn't mean everywhere. And we used to have these ongoing discussions, and we've refused to work with lots of people, and it's cost us huge money, and I've been yelled at. And quite frankly, if I was fireable, I would have been fired many times over this. And I still am. Everyone's fireable, but it's a little harder because the alternative to me is an engineer. And nobody, everyone's afraid, even with our products, we'll have no revenue. So it's really hard. Like, wait till you see Shyam's demo. It's like that. I'm sure we should sell this to U.S. industry. I'm sure we should encourage clandestine service, special operators, current clients, the U.S. military, the Five Eyes. I'm sure we should give it to them. I think we're going to have long discussions about where else, because, it's like you don't want to have something that could, we've been in the business actually of protecting everyone's right to their own liberty, which also means your own lifestyle, your own secrets, your own personal proclivities that are yours, your health records. And I think that's one of the things that makes our society so special. So there's a lot of new thought that's going to have to go on about this. But in the near term, if you're U.S. industry in Europe, clandestine services in the West, we'll definitely sell it to you. And we'll have to think hard about everyone else.
Other questions from the room? Yep, one right here in the front.
There's no shortage of problems in healthcare, and now that you're kind of getting under the hood in healthcare,
It's a
how
good
do you see
question.
Foundry transforming that whole
This is a good
industry
question.
across the different hospitals, across the whole spectrum?
Healthcare's big.
Well, thanks to the great work of two people are here and others, where we power, I think, 13% of hospital beds in the U.S.
Wow.
I
didn't know that.
Those use cases are super intricate. If you just look at Foundry, the use cases are optimization. How do you take scarce resources and disperse them in the most financially beneficial, but also ethical way? You have 1 million hospital beds, you have 1.5 million patients. Who gets them under what conditions? That's both economic and philosophical, moral implications and legal implications that you can deal with in Foundry. You also, in the hospital industry, and this is before you begin to integrate AI, you have highly trained workers, nurses, doctors, that need to be involved in the judgment chain. And so how do you do that and then do it systematically is a classic Foundry problem. I think you're also going to see that, given the way we can manage data in completely transparent way and show the transforms, meaning how the data is joined in a transparent way, that industry is going to be ideal for Palantir and AI, simply because certain optimization and knowledge-based transfer issues. So not everything a nurse understands or a doctor understands should be transferable to an AI, but some precursor decisions that can be evaluated should be, just in the same way in other contexts you identify and then have a handover to a human. But that can only be done under the condition that you can actually see how that was done, even simply for legal, ethical, and reputational reasons. And you also have the other reason why software is so important in that industry is it's margin challenged. So if you have a margin challenged, meaning the industry, or a resource challenged industry that is with complicated engineering and societal variables, that is something you need software for. And that's why our software has been so impactful during the COVID epidemic, why it's we barely had software sales into the hospital industry a year ago. It's just going like that. But it's going to, you will see where you begin to integrate. It's going to be very hard for other people to get in. Our product's ideally suited for that plus AI, because just purely, one of the big concerns in the hospital is litigation. So it's like, I brought this patient in. Okay, great. Well, you're going to get sued either way, but like you need to be able to show, well, this is exactly how the decision was made based on these data sets. That requires a branching architecture, ACLs, an ability to do this transparently, ability to show how the data was organized, meaning the transforms. And then if you're running AI on top of it, you're going to have to be able to unpack that in court, which we do natively. And then one of the valuable things for us, besides helping hospitals, which is incredibly valuable and gratifying, and my father's a doctor, so finally might get some respect at home, is that it is a much more intricate, difficult use case than people realize outside that industry, and it highlights where a product works and where it works and where it doesn't. So we also have a vested interest, because we can show off, okay, these are the very complicated issues that, by the way, you're also going to have if you're building an engine or drilling for oil and gas, or if you're doing pharmaceuticals, or if you are building water plants, or if you are doing really anything that involves the convergence of complicated engineering and regulation, which is basically every industry in this country. But this one particularly highlights it, partly because of the challenges on the resources, and partly because of ongoing litigation challenges. Oh,
We'll just repeat that question for everyone else.
First of all, try not to embarrass Ganesh, who's our representative. In your perspective, which is the biggest deciding person in the C-suite to deploy Palantir technology? CFO, Chief Innovation Officer, Chief Digital Officer, Chief Technology Officer? Who is the belly button to really push you guys across the line inside a culture that's not ready to accept?
Just to repeat the question for those listening to the stream, the question was, putting aside the remark about Ganesh, a colleague of ours, who's the main person in the C-suite that you think is the
well, no, I think the part of it is, like, say there's resistance in the org. But the real answer is it just depends on the org. We have partners here where the CEO wants to get involved in that, in technical decisions. We have partners. We just need somebody who has the authority, if they see value, to push quickly. And so in some orgs, that's the CFO, actually, surprise. In some orgs, that's the CEO. Usually it honestly ends up being a coalition of, like, somebody who's got credibility. By the way, sometimes it's not in the C-suite. I mean, I see this all the time. We got our company off the ground because special operators went to the generals and said, yeah, you may not like that guy, but he's bringing us home safely. And the generals were like, yeah, I don't like that guy, but if you bring him home safely, I will buy your software. So, and that's a classic Palantir. The AI thing has just shifted this, though. It's like a year ago, the answer would have been, 2 years ago, it would have been CEO, or it doesn't work. A year ago, it's like mostly CEO. Last time we did this conference, I guess it was a couple months ago, it would have been like 70-30. Now, we have just a lot of very technical people in the technical part of organizations saying, okay, I'm going to do this. I have these 5 highly technical questions, which largely, you'll see it being answered, but come down to, safety, security, understanding the limits of LLMs, understanding where they have to be augmented, those kind of questions. And if you can answer those questions, and more importantly, show it, they're off to the races. So it really, really depends. And it also depends geography to geography. One of the things that's made America very successful for us is more people can make these decisions. So when we're in Europe, it really has had to come from the C-suite, and then we've had a lot of resistance. Then you also see, even in government, there's huge differences. Special operations works different than Intel, which works different than military. And in some of these cases, it's very disparate. You can work with one part and the other part you can't work with. But again, we constantly get asked by experts, meaning I probably shouldn't say this, but I could have built a business. I should have built a business. I could have gone to a hedge fund, but now I'm an expert on software analysis and I rate the software products and decide how valuable they are for Wall Street, right? And they always want to know how
dig at analysts here.
How big is the TAM? And it's actually quite hard to calculate it for us, but one of the things that has made the TAM much bigger in the US is more people can decide to say yes, much more. And in the AI context, it's really, since we're on the frontier and everyone knows we're on the frontier, it's one of the really cool things is it's the first time I've seen a market, maybe since we built our Intel product, where everybody knows we're on the frontier, and therefore it's like, okay, there's no playbook. This really helps us, because when there's a playbook, maybe we disagree with the playbook, which we often do. Like, software needs to do these 4 things to fit into our architecture, or we're not going to buy it. So that's really slowed Foundry's growth down, because we actually have a different view. Our view is that it should be category defining, meaning you should be able to answer these questions independent of what an expert says software should be like. Because someday you are going to have to ask and answer and write to your enterprise under difficult conditions, questions that you're not asking and answering tomorrow. And you're going to have to be able to do it in a way that's not just data science, but is algorithmic. We've always thought that. But that was, we lost a lot of those battles. And even though Foundry grew 67% last year, in a world that was more frontier, probably would have grown 3x of that. And so now in the AI context, there really is no playbook of how it should look. People just want it to work. And that's again, one of the main reasons we've had more inbound for Palantir in the last couple of weeks than we had all last year. And it's precisely because the playbook is out the door. Everyone knows this could be very valuable if implemented correctly. Everyone knows if it's not implemented correctly, you're going to get some poetry, and it's going to be expensive. Or it could, yeah. So that's very different.
Great. Thank you all for the questions. I think this is a great introduction of what we're talking about here and what that frontier will look like. Any other closing remarks?
Thank you for coming. For those of you new to Palantir, you've picked a great time to come. We've never had a vibe this good. It's been pretty good in the past, but it's not like this. So, I hope you enjoy being here as much as I enjoy having you here, and hope to see you soon.
Thanks.
All right, that was Karp speaking. We're going to hear Shyam do a demo of AIP, and then we get the clients giving presentations.
Please welcome from Palantir, Chief Technology Officer, Shyam Sankar.
All right, this one's going to be exciting. Let's see. Let's see this one. I might pause just a little bit to analyze some things, but I'm going to let him go through.
I am so excited to be here to launch AIP, this product we've been working so hard on. In my almost 20 years at Palantir, I've just never been excited about what we've been building to this level. It's not just the impact. We've worked on tons of impactful problems. It's really the speed that this impact is going to be happening in here. So AIP is really our core set of technologies that are designed to bring LLMs to your enterprise, to supercharge and accelerate your experiences, everything from integrating data, hydrating your ontology, building AI-enabled applications, and even AI agents and copilots. AIP enables you to deploy LLMs anchored in your data on your private networks. It enables safe handoff between the tools in your enterprise, the actions, and other AI models you've already built. It enables you to govern and control this so that you ultimately have deep trust in the AI. this moment, I mean, the AI technology is going to be massively disruptive. It's absolutely a case where the dynamics here are winner take most, if not all. So be the winner by disrupting first. And as I've been thinking about this, I've been thinking, where is the value likely to accrete? And I believe it's going to be in the workflow and the application layer. And that should be quite exciting for all of you here. And that's because the models are already commodities. The pace here is accelerating and exhilarating. This slide, I made it a few weeks ago. It's already out of date. Falcon has been released with an Apache license yesterday.
Real quick here, when he says the models are a commodity, this is the biggest thing to understand. Because if the models are a commodity, then the only thing that makes the LLMs valuable for an enterprise, which is what creates the business upside for Palantir, is if those models can be trained on proprietary data, which means the enterprise has to trust the company that's training it to actually secure that data. And that's where Palantir comes in.
So we've gone in less than 2 months from Llama to Alpaca to Vicuña. We've gone from GPUs to CPUs. We've gone from massive cloud software stacks to running these models on a Raspberry Pi. So the editorial from this, like, what does this mean? This means that you're likely going to have a menagerie of models, not a single model. And you're going to be able to cheaply customize and tune these models to your needs. It also means that the biggest, baddest model is not the one that's most likely to win. It's going to be, there's this Goldilocks of power to iteration speed. What is the right sized model that you can iterate most quickly on? And the reason that's the case is that LLMs alone are not enough. You need tools. Actually, they need tools. For example, they need a tool that will help calculate the enterprise profitability of an account, or compute the forward-looking inventory for a specific product. They need access to an action registry to execute operations across the enterprise. They need access to a semantic layer with rich objects and links to actually define the proper grounding and act as an anti-hallucinogen. And sometimes this is called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. You probably have heard that term a few times now. It also needs access to a branching environment, someone's mentioning, where it can actually stage proposals or edits to the world for humans to actually review. So AIP comes not only with an incredible set of tools, it comes with a tool factory that you can build your own tools to augment them and make this maximally useful in the context of your enterprise. How do you get an LLM to post an invoice to NetSuite? You need to build a tool for that. Or how do you reallocate inventory in SAP? That's what AIP really empowers here. Let's build that enterprise together, brick by brick. Let's start with data integration, and really an entirely new paradigm for that. When I was young, WYSIWYG meant what you see is what you get. I think now it really means what you say is what you get. You can move much more quickly building things by simply saying what it is that you want. So let's start by transforming some of these data sets that we see here. Very clearly, I can see what the AI does and does not have access to. In this case, it's just the metadata. So I can select the data sets that I would like to transform, and I can simply say something like, give me all the claims from the West Midlands. I can say that in English, in German, or even Ukrainian. And what I get back is a series of transform boards that I can easily inspect and make sense of and see what is the AI doing. I can ask more complicated questions like, give me the unique landlords with open cases and construct a geopoint column that has latitude and longitude. So I can visualize these items on a map and verify the location. So if we fast forward a little bit and we assume we have a more complicated looking graph here, and I'm new to it, I can actually ask AIP to explain to me, what are these transforms doing? And you think about how that's going to transform how you do documentation, how you do change management, actually the comment in a code commit when you're changing your pipeline itself. At all. If I have my target ontology here on the right, and I have the data sets I'm trying to integrate on the left, why can't I just select it all and ask AIP to connect the dots for me? And what we will get back is a series of builder boards, which we can very clearly see with the purple annotation was AI-generated content that I can step through and verify as a human that these make sense to me. AIP is your AI operating system. Every operating system has a command line. AIP's is Terminal. With Terminal, I can easily interact with all of my enterprise knowledge and my enterprise applications through a large language model. Let me show you that. So we start off in our supply chain control tower, and we see that we have a new notification about a disruption to our Velinor distribution center. So this email has come in. So why don't we open up Terminal, load up our distribution centers, and start by simply saying, I received this email. We'll paste in the content of the email. And then we'll ask to visualize the order statuses that are impacted by this context here. And what you can very clearly see on the right-hand side is the handoff overview. I can see both the chain of thought and the chain of tools that AIP is employing to answer this question for me. So it's interpretable, it's understandable. I get back the visualization. I select just those that are waiting for shipment, and I can drill down further into this. So the relevant question I think now is maybe to figure out what's the revenue at risk here? So what's the total value of my high priority orders that are impacted by this distribution center disruption? Again, I see through the handoff overview how AIP is breaking down and answering these questions, how it's employing the tools that we talked about earlier to solve this for me. $13 million. I can see all of the objects I have access to here. You can kind of think about this as like LS at the command line. More importantly, I see all of the tools I have access to, not only the tools that are native to AIP, but also the tools that I've used the tool factory to custom build. So let's call one of those ML models now that I would like to run an order reallocation model that is specific to my enterprise. AIP will find it, bring it to me, and allow me as the human to go execute that model. So we get the results of that, but this is not the way to look at it. What I want to do is I want to look at this in the context of my operational applications. So I asked to open up my operational inventory allocation application, and I can see I have 53 high priority orders with $13 million at risk. I can see on the map the distribution centers I'll be drawing inventory from. And on the right, I see the actual edits to my inventory plan that's being proposed to me. And from right here, I can take this operational decision. So I've taken a problem that would have taken me 300 minutes to solve, solved it in 3 minutes. And with AI agents, I will show you soon how you can solve this next time in 3 seconds. But you don't want to live in the command line all day long. You want to be able to create on-the-rails workflows for your enterprise users. And you want it to fit them perfectly. And you want to be able to adapt those workflows to their evolving needs. And you want to do that by simply just saying what it is that you want. So how did we build that supply chain control tower application that we started Terminal with? Well, by asking for that application. So if we start here, we provide a description. I would like a supply chain application that allows me to look at manufacturing plants, distribution centers, customers, and some other metadata. This gets me 80% of what I want. I get the scaffolding of my product generated for me. Now I want to add some metrics to this. Let's look at OTIF. Let's look at monthly sales, deliveries, and I can get the widget created for me. Now, this is not an application. It's a dashboard. To the extent I have a supply chain problem, I can see it, but I can't do anything about it. The alchemy of AIP is to be able to change that simply with a single spell, to ask for a button in the header that will allow me to reallocate my inventory. So let's do that. And we'll see the blue button appear in the top right. But how is that working? You know, it's obviously not magic. This is a concrete manifestation of a tool. So if we go to the ontology and we look at the management application, I can see I have this function, reallocate product, that takes in a target and source distribution center, product ID, and amount to reallocate, and that it triggers via a webhook a call and write back to SAP. This, again, is a concrete manifestation of a tool. In this case, a human is clicking the button to employ that tool, but this is a little bit of foreshadowing where we will see how we give this to an LLM to supercharge our enterprise. Okay, WYSIWYG applications. Is that what I want? Because I think what I want is a WYSIWYG enterprise. I want to build an army of AI agents that do what I say for me. I want my employees to become managers of agents who review AI-generated recommendations. I don't want to be 100% better. I want to be 100 times better. Let me show you how. Let's build that together, brick by brick, starting with AIP logic. So here I'm going to build a new function, and the input to this function are going to be these emails I get about my supply chain. And then I can add a logic block. It could be a Python logic block, it could be a Java logic block, but let's make this an LLM logic block. And I will pass into this a prompt, which is both the content of the email, but also a task to read this email and extract locations from it. And I will define my output of this function. It's a string array of locations. It's called locations. This is an integrated development environment. So now I can go run my function, create some mock data around a hurricane coming in southern Florida, and test and see what is this function able to extract from me here? How does it work? So let's run it, and we'll see we get back Miami and Fort Lauderdale. And we can open up the debugger to actually step through and see the interaction between my code and the LLM and what are the prompts I'm sending? What am I getting back? How is that working? So great. But this is not what I want. I don't want string locations. I want to know what distribution centers are going to be impacted by this storm. So to answer that question, we have to give the LLM its first tool, the ability to query the ontology for our distribution centers and a prompt of how to use this tool. Use this as your location data set. And then I need to change the output. I no longer want strings. I want object references. I want an array of distribution centers as the output value. It's strongly typed here. So let's make that change and rerun our function and see what we get back. As you'd expect, we get distribution centers. You can hover over them. You can see these are rich objects that are defined, the semantics of my ontology here. And now the debugger is substantially more interesting. You can actually see the call, and you can see how it's employing the tool of calling the ontology service to go figure out what distribution centers to return as answers. You know, you can't make these up. This is retrieval augmented generation. But I don't think this is what I want either. What I really want is the LLM to help me figure out what to do about the inventory shortages that are caused by this disruption. So let's enable that by adding another LLM block here. So we're chaining our logic together. And I'm going to pass in the email, the locations from above, and a new prompt to use these tools I'm about to provide to determine how to resolve the shortage. And so we'll go with 3 tools. The first is reallocate product. We saw this tool earlier in the supply chain application, and a prompt of how to use this tool. In addition to that tool, we're going to give it 2 more tools to calculate the shortage KPI and to get reallocable inventory. Now I want to change the output type as well, though, because what I want back is a scenario. I want an AI recommendation of edits to my inventory plan that I could consider making. Now, when we run this, we will get back a rich set of edits to the inventory plan, a scenario that I can evaluate. But the debugger is substantially more interesting now. The first block here shows us where it's getting the distribution centers. And the second block shows us repeated calls, where it's how the LLM is invoking different tools, the return values of each one of those calls, the chaining of these calls to ultimately arrive at the solution and to provide me this case. I can save that as a test. This is a unit test. I have expected input, expected output. Now I have an ability to regress over this model. If we also have the full telemetry. If you allow me a cooking show moment, say this function is run in production, 5,000 times or so, I can see every production run of it. I have the full trace of the debug log. I can, for example, select just the times that we called the reallocate product tool. I can select a single run of that and see what happened. Walk through the trace. I could save this as its own unit test. This is how you build fundamental trust in these LLM functions. It's how you ensure quality as you upgrade your model or model versions change over time. The final part of this, though, is to turn that logic into an AI agent. So let's start by defining when I want my agent to run, on a schedule or when a new email object is created, which would be the case, select the object type, and I connect it to the email alert categorizer we just built. I set up who has access to even approve the AI-generated scenarios here. When we put this into production, we can go to a live view where we actually watch as the human agent team, the agents processing objects as they come in. I have full access to the chain of thought and the chain of tools that the agents are using. I can actually view the suggested AI edits in the context of the operational applications to make well-informed decisions. And I can switch to a view to see and manage my agents overall. the process view of how many agents do I have running, what processes are they working on, what is the historical performance of these agents. And there you have it. Brick by brick, we built this cyborg enterprise with AIP. What you say is what you get. I think LLMs are going to change every aspect of user experience in software. So in addition to sharing what AIP is today, I also wanted to share a little bit of the sorts of things that we're working on, how we're thinking about user experience in the future. We have started to experiment with cutting edge approaches to UX that deeply integrate LLMs, ontology, and agents into your AI operating system. So let me show you some of those concepts. So we start here, and on the left, we'll have a panel that has the ontology, agents, and logics directly accessible. And on the right, we have Leo, our AI copilot, that not only allows us to ask questions, but more importantly, wields the applications itself. I want to create a new work plan. Leo tells me the first thing to do is data integration. It opens up the pipeline builder application for me. Through the ontology I can directly interact with, on the left, I can see the objects and their relationships in the context of the apps here. I can ask Leo to bring the new data to bear, both from the ontology side and the data sets that I need to integrate, and use features that you've already seen to, for example, select this and ask AIP to connect the dots. I very clearly can see what content is AI generated, and I have the explainability. I can step through, step by step, and understand how this problem was broken down. And that trust is a core part of the concepts around human agent teaming here. So now I want to deploy this. So now it will open up a branch, a proposal. It'll allow me to submit that, to compare the diffs between the old and new pipeline. I'm getting workflow assistance from the agent now. And then once I push this to production, it will move me to an operational view where I can actually drag my agent to the business enterprise Kanban process to start the automation. Through Leo, I have full access to see what does the agent see. But on top of that, through what you say is what you get, I can build entire new widgets to help me in this context of human agent teaming see more and make better decisions. At a glance, I can see what data the agents do and do not have access to. And I can view the guardrails and the rules and security around any one of these agents. And I can also view that in the context of the operational applications themselves. I think every UI is going to completely change. This is the integration layer. I think I'm very excited about this. I think this is the moment that we should be wondering, why should we not be even more impatient? How do we make decisions even faster? How do we think bigger about the potential of transformation of these technologies? We will have booths set up throughout the Shire to show you more of this stuff. You can get your hands on it. You can play with it. We would love to ideate with you. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Please welcome Senior Director, Engineering Government Solutions at Cisco, Mike Yonkers.
All right, we're starting them. I'm going to let them just go and let them talk. So I'm not going to interrupt, and we will hear presentations.
It's hard not to want to run up there. I always watch people do that, and I'm like, I don't want to run on stage. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today to explain what we're doing at the company I work with Palantir. As was stated, my name is Mike Yonkers. I focus on government solutions inside of a company called Cisco. That's Cisco with a C, the networking company, not the food company, in case that there's any confusion about that. I've spent 20 or so years focused on the U.S. federal government at Cisco and a pre-sale systems engineering role. And about a year ago, I shifted into an IT operations role inside of Cisco supporting that customer. Today, I want to share with you, I'm going to try to thread a needle here. And depending on where you sit in the audience, if you support the federal government or deal with regulations based on the U.S. federal government, you'll understand kind of the lens that I'm applying to this. But if you support global governments or operate in other regulated industries, I think this will resonate with you as well. So the needle I'm going to try to thread is to kind of talk about some different problem sets that we're faced with at Cisco and how we're solving them. To be crystal clear, it was only a few months ago that I sat in the audience where you are now, and I kept hearing about Foundry and the ontology, and it turns out I'm an Apollo customer of Cisco, so I mean of Palantir. So I just want to be clear about that up front as well. I was at FoundryCon thinking and trying to figure out how to adopt Apollo, and here I am at AIPCon to talk about Apollo. But I just want to be clear about the problems we're solving. So after plenty of years and a lot of money invested from Cisco and me, I can stand before you today and say my purpose in life is service. And I work for a company whose purpose is to create an inclusive future for all. That's what we're doing at Cisco. It is our stated intention to create an inclusive future for all. And I think that's really cool. I love these big aspirational goals. I think they're really important to have because it's how you rally troops and how you go take on big problem sets. However, I've learned over time, I've always heard this statement, an existential threat, and I've never understood it until I really started thinking about the problem sets that we're facing, myself and my team at Cisco. And what I mean in this context is if I am trying to provide service to the customers that I support, which in the context of this discussion is the US federal government, and if Cisco is trying to build an inclusive future for all, but if we can't deliver our capabilities to our customers so that they can serve their customers in the environments that they need it in, that is a true existential threat. I supported a team of a couple hundred engineers around the world supporting global governments. And the idea is that we weren't going to be able to help our customers solve their problems. Ultimately, if you play that out, means that we as a team don't need to exist. That's an existential threat. And I had heard this statement all along, like, people say this, they're like, oh, we're facing this existential threat. I had no idea what that meant until I started looking across my team and realizing I don't ever want to have to lay off people ever again in my lifetime. So to me, very viscerally, it was this, kind of what can I do? What sorts of problems can I solve inside of Cisco? But if you extend that and think about if my company, if our entire purpose is to create this inclusive future for all, if we can't reach all, then we can't actually realize our own vision. So we found a way to solve this problem. Surprise, it's with Palantir. But let me kind of build this out a little bit. And this is where I'm going to try to thread this needle. If you look at this picture, the kind of logos in the middle, if you're Cisco customers at all, you might recognize WebEx, you might recognize Meraki. The cloud is our CX cloud, which is something that we're doing to try to provide better capabilities and services to our customers. You may or may not be familiar with that. And then at the bottom is meant to represent the kind of global nature of the company that I work with. So the government services and solutions that I'm now responsible for providing inside of Cisco are global in nature. They're not just focused on the US, but the US government is where my background is, so that tends to be where I kind of talk through these use cases. But if you think about this, there's kind of Europe on the left. Think about things like GDPR or data sovereignty types of problems. There are issues there that need to be solved for that are challenging if you're a company like mine who wants to provide cloud-based services to our customers in Europe, but we're a US-based company. And if our data resides in the US, then that becomes a problem for our customers, right? In Europe. And in the middle is kind of North America. I can bore you to tears with US government regulations, be they actual federal government regulations as it applies to the government itself, or the regulations that they push forward into these other industries that we all have to deal with. And then on the right is Australia. And I put that there because part of my heart is in Australia right now. My youngest son is doing a study abroad in Australia. But the point is, we have actual legitimate use cases that we're trying to solve with the Australian government, which kind of proves the point that I'm trying to make here. But if you think about this, multiple cloud offers, I'm just representing 3, of which we have a bunch inside of Cisco in this picture, as represented by WebEx, Meraki, and CX Cloud, going to multiple geographies, and then inside of those geographies, multiple sets of regulatory requirements that we have to meet along the way. This is an incredibly complex problem. And the question over here was asked about at what level of the company do you have to be engaged to kind of push these things forward? I'm a few steps removed from the C-suite inside of my company, but I can tell you this is a problem that the C-suite of the company that I'm working for is trying to solve. How do we drive this inclusive future for all, meet the demands and needs of all of these customers in this world of sort of economic nationalism? That's another one of my favorite phrases that I never understood until I started having to live it. how are we solving these, right? Because the idea, the whole promise of cloud is I could build something where I want to build it and run it on behalf of customers, and the customers don't have to deal with that problem set anymore. But if we can't meet the requirements of where we want to take these solutions, then we have a real problem. And one of the ways we could meet these solutions, and maybe some of you guys have tried this, is just build separate environments everywhere you want to go. So let's take a solution, we'll pick on Cisco WebEx, and let's think about this. If I wanted to build WebEx and meet the United States government, just as itself a customer, it has 5 different sets of requirements when you look at cloud requirements to meet the United States government. They're classified for the intelligence community, the Department of Defense. There's unclassified for the Department of Defense, but not all unclassified is the same inside the context of the United States government. And then there's truly like sort of civilian services. So in the US, just supporting the government, that's 3 different accrediting bodies. That's GSA doing FedRAMP, that's DISA doing all the DoD certification stuff, and then that's the intelligence community doing its own certification stuff. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, I'm not going to dwell on these, but if you're interested in this kind of stuff, Google the blog that Palantir wrote about how they solve for DoD Impact Level 6 or IL6. It's fascinating reading and really kind of reinforces the point I'm making here today. But the point is, we had to figure out a way inside Cisco to separate product development from product deployment. So there's not enough time and not enough money in the world, even at a big company like mine, to go build bespoke solutions to the order of 5 just to meet the United States federal government requirements. I haven't even touched private industry inside the US, and then you extend that globally. There's not enough time, and there's not enough money, and there's not enough talent to go do that. So I've spent the last 6 years ranting and raving about DevOps and the notion of crashing together your development team and your operations team. It's awesome. It's culture change. It's hard to get done, but it's really, really cool, and it's really, really powerful when you can pull it off. But the problem is you can't have DevOps teams and meet those global requirements if you don't separate your development from operations. So then my head starts hurting, and I'm like, wait a second, I've been trying to bring these things together, and now somehow I have to separate them again? I'm going to lose all the goodness of what we were trying to solve for when we brought development and operations together. We can't have that. So the problem we were trying to solve was logically, logistically, physically to meet requirements like certain citizens with certain data living in certain places. Like those are hard requirements that are given to us globally. How do we solve for those in operating these solutions, but how do we get the goodness of DevOps? So the first thing we were trying to figure out was in a physical way, keep development from operations separate. And then the notion was, okay, but one of the cool things about cloud and DevOps is we can build it once and deploy it many. So we're faced with this, like, oh my gosh, like we spent all this time crashing together DevOps. Now we're going to re-separate them, but we still want to build something once and deploy it and solve all these problems. So the solution is Apollo, and that's why I'm here today, because we work with Palantir. We use their platform called Apollo, and we solve those 2 problems that I just described to meet our customer demand. This is an interesting kind of picture. It took us forever to figure out how to try to represent the complexity of what we're dealing with in a very simple graphic. But the point here is at the top, I'm still picking on WebEx because our executive vice president of engineering, security, and collaboration, we're taking WebEx and we're driving through this. We're providing WebEx to meet these requirements on a global government basis. The little picture there is monitor. The monitor is what you build when you're building out Apollo. It drags along through Apollo. Central Hub is where we register all this stuff. And if we were in a perfect world and everything were containered and we're all registered properly through Kubernetes and we had all our Helm charts all straightened out, like life would be easy. Life is not easy, right? We're all practical people. That's not the world we live in. So we do some interesting things in the Central Hub, and then we get this notion of a very hard line. This is where I start to separate if I'm doing classified and unclassified work. If I'm trying to meet localized requirements in the country of Germany, for example, I can't have people back here operating those environments. So it's a very hard line between the Central Hub and then these remote hubs. Now I can meet customer requirements in the remote hubs, but I have this interesting problem, this clock that sits in the middle. I have different accrediting bodies with different sets of requirements before I'm allowed to push stuff remotely. Again, back to my United States government example, I got to go deal with GSA, I got to deal with DISA, and I have to deal with the intelligence community. All have different requirements, all have different timelines, all have different things they want to see before I'm able to move things. But Apollo gives us this capability. And the cool thing is, where I'm in a company where we're figuring this out on our own, we're partnering with a company in Palantir that's already solved these problems. So I don't have to go and roll my own and figure this stuff out the hard way. I can leverage Apollo and do this interesting thing where I can let the development teams inside of Cisco that are not my responsibility, but I work with very closely, they can do what they do best. They can do their development wherever they are. From a global point of view, they can drop off features. Some of our BUs, the business units, deliver stuff on the order of like tens to hundreds of new software drops a day. Let me tell you, if you try to push that inside of a regulated environment, it makes people's head explode when you say, I want to bring 10 software updates every single day, including weekends across this boundary. That hard line, the accreditors are like, no, try again. That's not going to happen. But this is what we can do with Apollo. We've separated development from deployment of the environments, and then we allow the product development teams to go do what they do best. And then we build service and or site reliability engineering teams, or SRE teams, to actually go run in these environments that can meet the local requirements of whatever environment is we're going to. Citizenship, clearances if they need it, and we can kind of meet the requirements along the way. So we end up in this really cool and I want to say magical place. Now, I am a huge fan of Simon Sinek. If the engineers and architects who I get to work with every day were here, I like to claim I'm an engineer. I have a double E degree and a computer science degree, but the people I work with every day will tell you I've been a manager and a leader for so long, it freaks them out when I touch keyboards. They actually call me, in the context of SRE, they call me Chaos Monkey because I break things in ways they didn't expect. I think that's good. They don't see it that way. But why am I here? So Simon Sinek is one of my favorite authors when it comes to leadership. And Simon Sinek says, always start with the why. And I'm breaking that rule because I'm ending with the why, but I wanted to share this with you because I had this opportunity. More than anything, I want to express gratitude for the Palantir team that I get to work with and the Palantir capabilities that we're bringing inside of Cisco. Because we are solving a real hard problem that I'm convinced is an existential threat to me as an individual and my company as a company. So I was sitting right there in the back row, because I'm a back row kind of guy, right in the middle of this audience at the last conference. And I took precisely one note the entire time I was here. And that note is this quote. I brought this with you. Isn't it cool when you have a prop? That note was, iterate with a partner you trust. And to me, that's what this is about. I'm headed into uncharted territories in a company that is as massive as the company that I work with. And I want to work with someone who understands, not necessarily has solved all these problems, but at least understands the problems that we're faced with. So we got a fighting chance to iterate through this thing and go figure out how to solve for that existential threat. So my quote, the thing that brought me back here today and why I'm so happy to be working with Palantir and Apollo as a platform is exactly this. I'm iterating with a partner I trust. And so more than anything, I just want to express my gratitude to the Palantir team for everything that they've done to support us. If you have any questions about what we're doing inside of Cisco and how we're using Apollo, I'll be around all day. I'd love to engage with people. Thank you for your time and attention.
That was great. The ending where he's like, I want to work with
Please
people I
welcome
trust.
Chief Digital and Technology
That was
Officer
great.
at JD Power, Bernardo Rodriguez.
All right, this is JD Power. Let's see what we got here. But saying that he really trusts Palantir, that they get his problems. When they say it's a consulting firm, they're consulting and they're trying to get your problems.
So I'm going to give you a little bit of show and tell of the things that we're doing with AIP and LLMs. Before that, a little introduction. I think you know JD Power because we give awards to cars. We do benchmarking. We talk to a bunch of millions of customers of mostly OEMs. And then we give awards. So you've probably seen commercials on maybe the Super Bowl. So that's the SUV of the year or the best experience on a luxury car. So that's us. But in reality, that's a very small part of our business. Most of our business is around data analytics. So what we've done over the last few years is to build and aggregate data sets that in a way define the inner workings of the auto industry. Which is a $1 trillion industry. It's a big, big industry. So we understand what cars can be built, what cars are actually built, where are they sent, what cars are sitting in parking lots in the dealers, when are they sold, the price they're sold at, what incentives are applied, demographics of who buy those cars, the problems the cars have when they're repaired, warranties, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a complete view of the car industry. And
we spent many years doing things with these data sets. We do some machine learning models, very domain-specific models, traditional models. And we decided about a year ago that we're going to get into AI with more conviction. And particularly this year, we've been driving to become an AI-first company. So we're happy to partner with Palantir. I think the last slide about iterating with a party you trust is very relevant to us, because we've been learning a lot over the last 5-6 months. We actually been working together for about 5 or 6 months. So why now? This works? Okay, great. So what we've seen over the last few months is that even my mother asked me about ChatGPT, correct? So there's a big step in innovation in AI, correct? Things are becoming, in a way, commoditized. If you go to sites like Hugging Face, there are hundreds of thousands of open source models there to be leveraged. Many LLMs, some regression models, classification models. Some models have been downloaded tens of millions of times. So now the secret sauce of AI is not on the models that you can build, but how do you apply them to the data that you have? And as you will see, how you deploy them into applications that can actually move the needle. And again, we have consolidated these data sets. We have bought many companies over the last 4 years because we wanted those data sets to come into the fold, correct? So we bought companies that have inventory data, for example. 6 months ago, we bought a company that had data around EVs. So now we have all this data, and we say, awesome, with all this data, and then with AI, with LLMs, what can we do? And as we look at the industry, a $1 trillion industry, it becomes a very exciting and open field opportunity. Our job with Palantir is not to necessarily focus on efficiencies internally, but actually build solutions that move the needle in the auto industry. Those are our main clients, correct? So it's a $1 trillion industry. Any problem that we solve is a big problem to be solved. So you can think about problems like when you buy a car, correct? And you try to figure out what is the car that you want, that you need. Where can I find it? What is the right price? That's for a consumer a big problem. Dealers have to figure out what car should I order? How should I price them, correct? And OEMs have a lot of challenges and opportunities ahead, right? What car should I design? Which ones should I actually build? Where should I send them in the US? What should be the right price? The incentives. And are my cars breaking? What are the problems in repairs? In repairs, for example, in warranty, there's about a $7 billion spent today in the auto industry just to manage warranties. Can we move the needle on a $7 billion line, for example? So what we're trying to figure out, we're trying to experiment with Palantir is how can we use AIP? And again, when I say we're trying, we started 4 or 5 weeks ago when the launch, correct? So it's impressive how much we have done, and I'll show you a little bit where we are. But what type of problems can AI help us solve, particularly LLMs? So let's start with the problem statement that I started at the beginning, correct? I want to buy a car, and I want an AI to help me buy a car. So the first you can think about is something like this, correct? I want to buy my first plug-in hybrid. I currently have a small SUV, and I think it's the right car for me and my family. What models can you recommend to me? So you can think also, I love AI. I'm going to go to ChatGPT and ask him this question, correct? But unfortunately, if you go to ChatGPT and you ask them, hey, when were you last trained? It will tell you that it was trained in September 2021. So how can a machine, an AI that was trained so long ago, help me buy a car now? And if you look at the industry, there are a lot of things that have happened in those 600 days before, from the time that ChatGPT was trained, correct? 600 new models were launched in the industry. 1.5 different car configurations were made. 1.2 million cars in inventory are in each day in the dealers, but 1.1 are sold on the average. And that's actually getting now higher than we're getting away from COVID. And there's about a $2.4 billion a month spent in incentives. So how can an AI that was trained 600 days ago help you understand what is the right choice for you now, correct? So we're trying to figure out that. What we're doing now with LLMs, what we've done for the last few weeks is try to determine how can we take the best that an LLM can offer and map it with the data that we have that is real-time, high-quality data. So I'm going to show you, So we asked ChatGPT for the question that I showed you about the plug-in hybrid, and they gave me some models that were actually 2021 models, obviously, because it was trained that way. But at the end, it said, Additionally, checking with local dealerships or visiting manufacturer websites will provide you with the most up-to-date information on the latest plug-in hybrid models available. Great, because that's the only thing you can say, correct? Can we do better with that data? So I'm going to show you a demo. Let's not start it yet. And a couple of things before the start, okay? One, this is not a consumer-facing application. This is an application that we're building for us to prepare and build that consumer-facing application. That's going to be in our site, and it's going to be in the site of some of the OEMs, correct? So what we're learning now is the interface, but most importantly, how do we tell the LLM how to, quote unquote, behave? How do we put all these things together, correct? And I'll give you some of the lessons that we have learned over the last few weeks. And then second, what is important to us is to understand that the dialogue that a person has with an LLM can go in many, many different ways and can go very deep or very shallow, correct? I'm going to show you here just a couple of questions that a user might have, but then we can talk about what's happening in the background and how we can how that conversation can be extended to many other use cases. Okay, so let's start the demo. Cool. So we start a session. We call this session Family Car. And the user types basically the question that I talked to you about in the first slide, correct? Which is, I want to buy a hybrid. Can you help me out, correct? So this goes to an LLM. The LLM takes and understands what the question is about. And then the LLM says, okay, I'm going to look at J.D. Power's data, and I'm going to find the best answer for this question, correct? So the LLM takes that and gives that to the application, and it says, okay, these are the cars that I found on the J.D. Power data that I think you will appreciate, or that would be good for you. But then there's an additional question. Hey, I like this feature that keeps me in the same lane. This is customer language, not technical language. And actually, I don't want to spend that much money. So the LLM takes that, tries to understand the message, goes back to the J.D. Power data and say, okay, here you go. Here are 3 potential models that you can take a look at. And by the way, here are the trims, which are specific trims for those models. The customer can select a couple of things that they like, and then we tell the LLM, awesome, here are the 2 things that I want you to compare, LLM. And he goes and say, here you go. So those things that are written there, if you look at it, are basically the reasons why the LLM recommends one or the other. This text is written by the LLM, correct? And you see things like, okay, I got you, it's lane keep and assist, it's great for your family. On the other side, there's a bunch of features that you might like, but it's pretty expensive. You told me you were not, you need to watch your budget, et cetera, et cetera. And then we tell the LLM, please give me a list of the features that you think are relevant on these 2 cars, correct? Let's find a car. LLM, help us find a car. So LLM goes to inventories and shows you where the cars are. And then just to select the one that you're going to go. This one is a bunch of miles away, but apparently, potentially, is the best car you have available. And then there you go, right? You find your car, et cetera. Again, short conversation, but just keep in mind that the LLM is driving all this. And I'm going to give you a quick look at what does it mean. So I told you this is an internal application. So as you train the LLM, you might tell them things. Like, for example, great, but when you show a car, also show the model year. Or you could say also show the payment, the monthly payment, because people don't understand MSRP very well. Show the monthly payment. So, okay, so what's happening in the background? Very quickly. I don't know if you guys work in Foundry or not, but basically here we have the yellow, which is the interface with the customer, where the chat happens. The green things are what makes it possible, the interaction between the LLM on all the parts of the applications. The ontology is in the middle. This is where data is, the data that we think is relevant for this use case, and then the applications on the other side, correct? The beauty of having Foundry and AIP is that you can build this really, really quickly, really quickly. So we build this in a matter of days and iterate in a couple of weeks. Now, the cool thing is then, obviously, we're connecting all these systems, but what about the LLM? How do we tell the LLM how to, quote unquote, behave? So you do that through prompt engineering, and that also AIP allows you to build that into the system. So this is actually what we tell the LLM to behave like, to do. So you are an AI assistant that provides guidance on someone looking to buy a vehicle. This is an actual instruction.
You are friendly and helpful. This is an action instruction. It's kind of crazy, no? Et cetera, et cetera. So that's the first one. The second one is use only in the information of vehicles from JSON, which is the J.D. Power basically data, correct? But make inferences about what the customer may want based on your query. This is actually what we typed as a prompt to build the application. So on the last one, we're telling Open ChatGPT, we're telling them, when somebody wants to compare vehicles, don't go crazy and go back to 2021 and find some stuff. Don't do that. Just focus on the J.D. Power data, correct? So there are more things that are happening here. We're telling them, for example, data on EVs. So if you can get, we will tell the LLM, if you can get a zip code from ask for a zip code, and you can check how much snow falls in that zip code. If there's a lot of snow, think about all-wheel drive and the clearance of the vehicle. If you have a zip code, you can know the price of electricity and the price of gas. And you can give me a total cost of ownership comparison between a plug-in hybrid and none. Also miles, for example, you drive a day, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very compelling. The beauty of the system, again, is that on the top, you see some of the stuff that we're doing in Palantir. We have several applications. Some of the applications are out in our clients already. We basically have data flowing all the way to an ontology and then applications feeding that ontology. One of those applications, for example, it's an application around repair analytics to understand warranty costs and optimize warranty costs. So what we're doing now is an application using LLMs that will take verbatims from repair. Every time a car is repaired, the technician in the dealer writes, this is what the customer told me, and this is what I found and how I repaired it. So you have hundreds of thousands of those, millions of those. So if you're a system engineer trying to focus on how to minimize warranty, you want to understand root cause. Why is this failing? At what speeds? At what temperature? What are the behaviors? So we're building an LLM, an application that is powered by LLM that will allow us to do this. And this is really real. I mean, we present this to a client in 2 weeks. And if we get it right, once we're convinced that it's right, we'll deploy as an application to our clients. Few things that are really critical for us, like the slide of the previous talked about is speed. We need to be able to do this fast. We need to be able to not only take things to market pretty fast, but learn really fast. And the iteration cycles here are not measured in months or weeks or days. This is about every hour we're learning things about how do we train LLMs and how do we understand how do they behave and how to leverage their insights, et cetera. Extensibility, we need to connect every single application, every single model that we have in our platform to an LLM-driven experience. And the last two are completely fundamental for us. We have our data is our IP, is the value of our company. The data that our customers put in our systems is absolutely critical. So this has to be bulletproof. It has to be very secured, and privacy and governance are really must for us. Finally, the road ahead. The first one, we have done this for a few years. So we bring data, analytics, and we do domain-specific models. Now we're leveraging LLMs to integrate into J.D. Power data and also bring all the models to provide new experiences. We've been working on that, and we're actually releasing applications in a couple of weeks. And ultimately, what we're thinking the challenge is, how do we build intelligence that actually understands the auto industry and can tackle fundamental questions? And that is combining LLMs with domain-specific models. And we're even arguing, should we train our own LLM to be able to be more nuanced about the discussions that we have in the auto industry? So run out of time. I want to thank the Palantir team, great partners. Taylor, Suzanne, Jan, Varys, all those guys have done amazing work. A lot of respect and appreciation for the work, and looking forward to the next few months. Thanks a lot.
That was the best one so far. That was insane.
Please welcome
That was
Chief
insane.
Digital Officer at Cleveland Clinic.
Oh, this is a good one.
Rohit Chandra.
This is a good one. Okay, this is the one I'm excited for. So we'll be analyzing this later, but Cleveland Clinic, I want to see what they're doing with medicine. The medical opportunity is so big. Bro, at JD, they're building a consumer-based application using Palantir. It's insane. All right, here we go.
That was pretty cool. Now we know where we start shopping for a new car next. So my name is Rohit Chandra. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at the Cleveland Clinic. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the work we've been doing with Palantir for the last couple of years. A little bit of background on the Cleveland Clinic. We're a large healthcare system, and our work is organized around 4 key stakeholders. First and foremost, our patients. There's caregivers, there's the organization, and then the communities in which we operate. And from a technology perspective, the approach that we focus on is to make sure that we're working backwards from providing value to one or more of these key stakeholders. In addition to striving to provide the best healthcare possible, we have a strategic imperative to touch as many lives as possible and take care of as many patients as possible. And that's what drives the work that we're trying to do with Palantir, which is how do we improve hospital operations, throughput, and efficiency, and serve as many patients as possible. So talking a little bit about, I'm sorry, can we go back one slide? Yeah, thank you. So just to give a little bit of flavor for what it takes to operate a hospital, many of you who in the audience who are in healthcare will be familiar with this. But just for some backdrop for the Cleveland Clinic, we operate more than 20 hospitals, more than 200 outpatient locations. We have about 300 operating rooms, more than 6,000 beds, and we employ more than 6,000 physicians and more than 15,000 nurses. And we need to coordinate the work of all of these caregivers for a daily activity volume of more than 25,000 outpatient visits, more than 1,000 surgeries, and more than 30,000 pharmacy orders. Now, orchestrating all of this activity so that it functions like clockwork is not easy. All of the work in terms of scheduling physicians, nurses, supplies, and an operating room, making sure you have an ICU bed, a step-down bed, all of these things are complex to orchestrate. And like all organizations, we're a 100-year-old organization. We have grown organically. We have grown through mergers. And a lot of this orchestration is done mostly manual with light assist from technology. What we're striving to do here is how can we lean into automation so that all of this coordination is mostly automated and assisted as much as possible with technology. So when we looked at the products in the marketplace, we felt that they didn't really go deep enough in terms of tackling these problems. And so we actually went out and we chose to work with Palantir because we were looking for a technology partner, not somebody who was a domain expert willing to sell us a product. What has been unique about Palantir over the last couple of years is Palantir is not just willing, but is actually thrives on solving the hardest problems, as opposed to selling us an existing solution. And this translates into not just willingness, but eagerness to sit side by side with us, spend the time understanding healthcare, understanding our needs, understanding our process, understanding our culture, and then developing solutions from the ground up and literally from first principles. So how did we approach this? There's a crawl, walk, run approach, and let me talk about sort of the first step. As in any complex enterprise that has existed for a while, most of the operational information for the enterprise is littered across a variety of archaic systems. And just pulling that information into a single coherent view where you can actually reason about the product and business concepts is not to be underestimated. And that's sort of the first step that we've taken with Palantir to say, can we bring the information together? Can we construct the views that at least give us intelligent visibility into what is going on so that we can actually take actions, make decisions, and drive the enterprise forward? And then I'll touch a little bit later on the things that we're trying to do to go from the crawl to the walk to the run stage. So I'll touch on two areas. The first is capacity management. And this is a screenshot of the Hospital 360 module within Palantir, which gives us a view into bed occupancy across the enterprise. So I know that the screenshot may be a little bit hard to read, but we can now see in a single place all of the beds, the occupancy. We can double click and we can see the beds by unit, by facility. On the left-hand side, we can see all of the inflow of patients, and patients can come in from a variety of different sources. We have patients that are undergoing surgeries and will come in from an operating room. We have patients that we will admit from an emergency department. There are direct admits, and then there are hospital transfers where patients may need care that may only be available at one of our facilities. On the right-hand side, you can actually see the output overview, which is all of the discharges that are planned from the hospital so that you can actually have a view into bed availability across the enterprise. And previously, this information was really hard to get at. So when you were faced with trying to see, do you have the room to admit a patient? Do you have the room to accept a hospital transfer? It just wasn't possible. The other thing that we were leveraging Palantir in this one, in this view, is it's not only giving you a current snapshot, it's also forecasting or predicting which are the discharges that are going to happen later in the day. So instead of discovering at 8 p.m. that you were able to discharge a patient and you actually have a bed, you can actually predict which patients are likely to be discharged earlier in the day and allow you to make a decision, because by 8 p.m. it may be too late to accept a new patient, and you can actually have a view into bed availability, including forecasting and prediction, so that you can know which patients you can accommodate and make that decision and actually serve more patients. So what is the benefit that we get from this? We were able to see about 8.5% more patients in terms of hospital transfers. That's roughly about 9 to 10 new patients per week. Now, this module is live only in one of our campuses. But it's highly encouraging being able to see 9 to 10 more patients per week. The second part is we see a 75% reduction in time spent calculating bed activity. As I showed you on the previous screen, you can actually see all of the information at a level that's actionable and in a single view, as opposed to having to click to 5 different systems and having to decipher the data. And there's a 33% increase in patient acceptance rate, and that goes to our core mission to see as many patients as possible. The second module that I want to touch on is staffing. As many of you may have experienced or may be aware of, there's a significant nursing shortage, and being able to balance our load across our nursing staff is super important for us. Now, this module is giving you a view. Again, I'll try and explain the visuals. I realize the screenshot may be a little bit small. It's actually trying to do 2 things in a single view. The first is it can show you the occupancy literally by every unit in the hospital. What is the bed occupancy? What is the nursing requirement? What is the nurse assistant requirement? What is the PA requirement? Literally by unit across the entire hospital. The second thing it will show you is what is the current allocation of staff. So in a single view, you can actually see where you may be overstaffed, where you may be understaffed, and what are the adjustments that you can make to actually serve all of the patients and all of the demand across the entire facility. The second thing that we can do is we can forecast both the demand as well as staff availability over the next 2 weeks, so that you can actually develop schedules that can be 7, 14, maybe as much as 30-day projections to give people predictability in their scheduling over the next weeks. This visibility allows us to make these adjustments, and if in the past, all of this coordination required multiple nursing managers spending hours a day looking at spreadsheets or calling people coordinating through phone calls from one unit to another to figure out, hey, I'm short. Is there somebody? Do you have spare capacity? All of that was done through phone calls, spreadsheets, and without a single coherent view of what was happening across the enterprise. Now, the nice thing is that this module is live. People can actually have a single view on what is going on. And the impact is, for us, is significant, which is we now have 400 plus users who are using this module literally on a daily, weekly basis. The time that previously nursing managers were spending 4 to 5 hours a day just managing nurse assignment, and now they're able to do it in 45 minutes. And instead of discovering that you need to adjust a nurse from one unit to another a few hours into the shift, you can actually do that ahead of time so that you give people a little bit greater predictability and you're able to manage your staffing needs across the enterprise. Stepping back, I think we've now been activated these modules over the last 6 months across different portions of our enterprise, and it has been amazing. Many of those screenshots illustrate how we've been able to drive visibility and increasing automation across how we manage all of these sort of day-to-day operational tasks. It's important to keep in mind, though, that technology is an excellent enabler, but carrying the people, the process is an equally important pillar in driving these changes in a complex business. I'm sure all of you see that in your experiences, but for us, it's been very important to do this in a way where you actually are able to sit side by side with Palantir, design the tools, but at the same time, co-design them with the people and process so that they go hand in hand to achieve success. It's not just that you can enable technology and it'll magically just work. We're highly encouraged by the benefits of automation. Being able to reason, being able to move the conversation from just the mechanics and a litany of data in different systems to a coherent view where everybody's operating off of the same base has been excellent. And the walk and the run stage that we're pushing on now is how do we layer in AI and predictive technologies so that we can actually forecast what is happening so that we can plan not just in the moment, but forecast into the future. The second thing is we can actually make recommendations. I showed you a screenshot where you can have visibility on where we may be over and understaffed, but the next thing we want to do is actually make recommendations so that you can actually simply accept those recommendations for the most part, maybe after a little bit of a manual review. And as we build the confidence, then we can automate some of these recommendations and run a closed loop system. And all of this journey is driving towards increasing tools, increasing automation, maximizing throughput and efficiency with the eventual goal of serving as many patients as possible. Thank you so much.
Healthcare is huge. Healthcare is very, very huge. Now, they didn't talk too much about drug discovery, but they did talk about staffing, nursing, making sure you have all your patient data accurately represented. Imagine what this does for the NHS. And this is at what, 21 hospitals?
Another
NHS
round of
is 70 million
applause
people.
for our first half of speakers. All right, we're going to give everybody who's here with us live, who's here with us on the live stream, about 20 minutes to get a coffee, to get some food, to connect with each other, and we'll see you right back here in 20.
Okay, that was huge so far. So I'm going to give a couple of thoughts, and then I'm going to leave for about 10 minutes, and then I'll be back. So I was taking some notes here, right? This is the main thing I got so far from Palantir's AIPCon. Cisco says, we trust Palantir, and that matters because trust determines the basis for being able to actually use LLMs. JD, ChatGPT is useless for our LLMs. That JD presentation was phenomenal. The stuff that they're building from a consumer intelligence perspective for businesses to be able to search through car data in this example. And Cleveland Clinic, we needed a partner, not an existing solution. How many times have we heard Karp talk about that? Like, all we've heard Karp say is that what clients are being sold right now are, what do we call it? I did a Karp right there. steak dinners and PowerPoints. And these are existing solutions that aren't fundamentally innovative, aren't changing the paradigm of how the organization operates, and aren't changing the trajectory for the organization to grow. Because if you're a company, you're trying to grow. You're paying Palantir money so you can grow. And the only way to grow is to cut costs or grow revenue. And if AIP, which it seems like through these 3 presentations has blown expectations from what I was thinking it could become, is making you more efficient by reducing costs and growing your revenues, then that is very important. That is super, super, super important in the context of Palantir. Let's take a look at the stock right now. Oh, we got our boy Adam. What's up, man?
What's up? What's up? When you step away, I'll keep going to keep the chat, and then I'll leave when you come back.
Oh, that's perfect. No, you.
That's why I have to do things. I'm just coming I'm a backup.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so let's just take a look at the stock real quick. I have one thing to say on the stock, and then I'll let Adam work with you guys. Everyone that's complaining about the stock price decline, here's my perspective on this. My perspective is that the market has priced in. It's down 1.56%. It was at 1522 today, so we hit a 52-week high before the presentation. It's down at 1447 because I think the market is pricing in to an extent. Obviously, the exponential nature of what AI could be is not priced in, but what this conference is for the stock on the short term is priced in, maintaining these 14s, even the high 13s, to validate that the premium, it's a $30 billion company right now, is not just hype, is the point of this AIP conference. And so far, the 3 presentations I've seen is validating that's not hype. So even if we maintain 14 up, 126% year to date, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world, even though we were high at 15. All right, I'm gonna let Adam talk to you guys, give your raw thoughts on the conference, Adam, and I'll be back in like 5-6 minutes. You're muted.
What's up, everybody? So I'm going to say something and go out on a limb. Palantir has the possibility, and I don't care who screenshots this, as being one of the most valuable companies in the world. So a couple of things. Number one, having Coca-Cola on the desk is no coincidence. They're doing this on purpose. Number two, having Cleveland Clinic come out was absolutely massive because they're basically telling everybody, look, you want to know how NHS is going to get more efficient. People are like, okay, how is Palantir going to make NHS more efficient, right? How is Palantir going to solve NHS? And the guy from Cleveland Clinic basically told you, right off the bat, just one solution. At the very least, instead of knowing when people are going to leave at the end of the day and then it's too late to get another patient in, now we know when people are ready to leave in the beginning of the day, so we're already setting it up to have another patient come in. Think about that. They're going to become more efficient by being less inefficient, right? Increase efficiency by decreasing inefficiency. Remember I told you guys, is not the same thing. Being more efficient due to less inefficiency is not the same thing as just being more efficient, right? So this is a setup in a good way. They're basically telling people, look, you want to know what we're going to do for the NHS? This is exactly what we're going to do for the NHS. In general, I like the guy from JD Power that came out, and he basically, he didn't shit on ChatGPT, but he basically made it very seem like, look, ChatGPT is all right, but these are the limitations of ChatGPT, and we're making our own ChatGPT specifically for our own data sets, and then we're going to put it on our own website. So, I was watching Sasha the other day. I watch his channel a lot. I like a lot of things that he goes over. And he mentioned something about this AI revolution. I think he's low-key loving Palantir again, to be honest with you. So anyways, he was talking about, look, there's this whole AI revolution where, the top 10 companies, right, in the world are going to be spending billions of dollars, right? This increase for NVIDIA is coming like $4 billion from a certain amount of companies, from let's say 10 companies. He's kind of right. And he's like, well, where's all the other money going to come in? And what else is going to push NVIDIA? So now let's take it to the side of Palantir. Well, yeah, these main 10 companies, like a Tesla, like a Microsoft, like a Google, they could make their own ChatGPT, right? Their own version of ChatGPT. But what about everybody else? What about those companies that are worth $50 billion, $10 billion, $100 million, 20, 30, $40 billion, right? What about all the huge companies and mid-sized huge companies, not just the top 10 companies? What are they going to do? They're going to build an AIP. They're going to be using Palantir Foundry and build their own models using Palantir instead of making their own in-house models. You understand what I'm saying? So it's very, very interesting. I've been following it from the sidelines. I've been watching, Amit's channel. And that's my raw thoughts right now. That all of this is set up, right? The JD Power that they're straight up like talking about ChatGPT can't do this, and how they're building a model for their users is amazing. The Cleveland Clinic coming out specifically for healthcare, they're literally saying, right? Just put it in. Imagine they're talking, the Cleveland Clinic guy was like, hey, NHS, you want to know how Palantir is going to help you? Well, at the very least, they're going to tell you when you can fill up a bed, not at the end of the day, but closer to the hour of when somebody leaves. And there's a huge difference of somebody leaving at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or somebody leaving at 6 o'clock at night, or somebody leaving at 9 o'clock at night. Huge differences. And now you know where to allocate which patients into which beds, into which hospitals, into which wings, so on and so forth. Right? And this is also going to tell you which staff is available, which nurses are available, so on and so forth. It's absolutely massive. And what Shyam said was absolutely berserk. Look. Time out. Let's go back a little bit. C3 AI, the guy comes out and he says AI, degenerate, regenerative, AI. He didn't show shit. He didn't show jack fucking shit. Nothing. He's a buffoon. Hype. Palantir came out and not only said we have AIP, they're literally building you the fucking ChatGPT right in front of your fucking eyes. They took an email. They said, read this email. They read the email. They gave you information. They said, take this information. Now give me something on the information. On the right-hand side, they broke everything down, and they're giving you data that you can track. Then they took all of this into a digital twin, and they said, well, now that we have the information based on this, let's take a variation. Let's say we have a hurricane. What's going to happen? Okay, this is going to happen. Okay, well, how do we fix this? Bro, he literally showed you this in a 10-minute presentation. It's insane. I was literally texting Ahmed. I'm like, this is beyond anything I could have imagined.
Which out of the three you saw were you the most that impressed you the most? I think the JD Power one was just.
Look,
incredible.
I think, mark my words, every single one of these is a targeted presentation that they're specifically showing the public, hey, what can I fix?
Yes.
They're all set up. Bro, like there's no coincidence. Shyam going first. The second guy was the Cisco guy because he's showcasing Apollo, and he's basically trying to say level 6 clearance is something. That's why he said it, because everyone's like,
yes.
oh, we have level 6.
He slid that in there. He just slid it in there, yeah.
Correct, because everybody's like, level 6, and nobody cares. They're like, oh, level 6. Okay, well, he's like, yo, Palantir got level 6. They're figuring out problems that we were trying to figure out, and they're our partners, except they're not just giving us a model that is prefabbed. They are working with us as partners to fix things, to come up with answers. That's amazing. And then you have this guy, JD Power, who's literally shitting on ChatGPT without shitting on ChatGPT. He's basically like, look, ChatGPT is all right, but that's like a pen and paper. We're going to give you something really cool where you can build your own ChatGPT in a matter of a fucking month. Yo, the guy said we've been working on this for a couple of days, and this is what we got so far. They're training their own model.
I thought they gave this shit to them in January, and they had told us in April. The JD Power guy was like, no, we learned about it when y'all learned about it 4 weeks ago. And so in 4 weeks, they were able to build some crazy shit.
It's, bro, I'm telling you right now, I know you guys are going to say I'm crazy. Palantir can become a bigger company than Apple in the future. Listen, how is it?
It could happen, bro.
If this is, just look what they did. Look how many people you can get rid of at work. Look how much leaner you can become. They're not only giving you a model, they're giving you mini submodels within a model, and every mini submodel is being overseen by the same freaking model that a human can just come back and say, okay, this is good, that's not good, so on and so forth.
And the way I think they get to that, Adam, what you're saying, like crazy valuation is if they bring all of that to a consumer-facing product where your entire life is managed by the AI, like ChatGPT is a consumer product. If Palantir brings that, not to get like answers for like a, what's the stock price of blah, 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 you ask ChatGPT, but like, hey, schedule my meeting tomorrow at 5 p.m. AIP. And that, now I don't think they're even planning that right now, but maybe in the back of their head, they're thinking like, yo, could we bring this to billions of people? And if that happens, there you go.
Yeah, bro. It's crazy. Yeah, look, guys, whoever's in the comments, they said maybe 30 years. I never said it's going to happen tomorrow. It's going to take a long, long time. But just look what they're accomplishing. If ChatGPT was all the rage, they're literally destroying what ChatGPT does for business. It's been a month. It's been a month. They are showcasing in action, in actuality, not in theory, in actuality, actual models that are working and being used right now. Look what they're coming up with in literally weeks. Could you imagine you're training your model? And remember, the model's smart, so it's learning as you go along. Imagine you had a year to train your model. How effective that's going to be.
Yeah, and the training of the models is what matters. That's why the Cisco guy said, we trust Palantir because we have many applications. Cisco WebEx is a competitor to Zoom. They're in Australia, they're in the United States, they're in Latin America. All of them have different regulatory oversights and frameworks for how these consumer companies can actually implement within their geographies. And Apollo, apparently, which I didn't even know that was going to be the sort of key talking point, is the basis to deploy all of that across multiple geographies. Like, that's a big deal. Cisco is a very big company. They're I didn't check their market cap. I'm about to check it up right now.
Bro,
that's a big deal. And they do it because they trust Palantir.
The guy literally said, I am close to being a C-level executive. My job is to figure out how to... What's that?
It's a $200 billion company. Go ahead.
He's like, my job is literally to figure out how to make this inclusive and then make this not inclusive and then make this inclusive, which I got lost a little bit. But he goes like, do you know how hard that is? And Palantir is literally doing my job for me. And he says, it's a company that's our size, which is funny he said that because they're 200 billion. But he said that we're working with a company of our size, figuring out things together, and they're not giving us some prefab answers. That is the difference. I know a lot of people are going to think I'm freaking crazy over here. And a lot of people in the comments said that, they don't like Sasha because of that. But just listen to what the guy said. He's right on this. The push for NVIDIA, this all trickles down. This is positive for Palantir. The push for NVIDIA is from several companies that are going to build their own large language models in-house. And they have billions of dollars to spend on this hardware. Fantastic. What happens to all of the not $1 trillion or $500 billion and up companies? What happens not to those 10 companies? You still need to have something to compete. Where are you going to get it? Well, Palantir is your solution. Is it going to be as good as the ones you built in-house? Possibly so, and even better. But if it's not, it's going to be a very, very comparable solution. Just think about that. There's going to be a time that people will have to have large language models. Like that guy, the thing that JD guy said, where you go on his website and you just type in what car you want, it was freaking amazing.
It was insane.
Who would call a salesperson after that? Nobody.
And this is the important thing people don't, I think all of us don't understand, not just people, even I don't understand. 3 months ago, we could not imagine that the way the world, which is all 8 billion of us, engage with software was going to change. Because the way we used to do it was you type something in, you get content, you consume it. Now, if the thing is doing that for you, that changes everything, especially for an enterprise. And to do that effectively, securely, in a regulatory framework, all of these little dots, there's a lot of money to make on the upstream for a company that's able to solve all of those problems. Palantir doesn't have the growth rate yet where we think, they're taking advantage of that. But maybe that's because they haven't grown like that yet. I mean, who knows in Q3, Q4, they're saying we're growing 60, 70% year over year because every client is getting us more clients and more. Like, it's just insane. But the question is the potential there for them to get there? And I think with Foundry, it was there. With AIP, it's at a different level.
I agree. Anybody that's watching this right now play out, anybody who's watching these demos, if you're not impressed at these demos, somebody even made a comment, I wish that they would have, prolonged this because it should have been FoundryCon. They're not going to be prepared. They're not going to be able to show us anything. There's a guy on Twitter that was saying that. I called him a schmuck. Just like Palantir forever, you're thirsty for this dick, so shut the fuck up. So get off the jock. So they were prepared.
Adam's from New York.
And it only took 4 weeks. 4 weeks, guys, they set this whole thing up. And they're coming out with facts. They're coming out with presentations. They're coming out with awesome visuals. This is literally they're doing this in front of your eyes. I'm sorry if I'm hyped, but this is a fact. Because the guy is trolling in the comments, so I had to, keep in the lane.
If there was a day to be hyped, it would be today, right? When the stock goes from 7 to 12 and you're hyped, that might be unfounded hype because it could fall back down to 7. But when the stock goes from 7 to 15 and it maintains close to 15 because of some of this, if they shit the bed in this conference, if these presentations weren't real, the stock might not even be where it's at right now. I think it's validating the hype. And the exponential nature of how these trajectories and these S curves could intervene with each other in every different industry, that is what's not priced in the stock. And that's what we're hype about.
Ahmed, how is it? Look, could you imagine even for you? Thank you so much. Could you imagine right now you have you have Odea, right? Just think about it. How much easier would your life be if you, instead of have to like physically go into the data, you could just literally talk to, yo, listen, let's analyze this. How many users we had in the last hour? How can we make this better? What experience can we do? Should we cut the end screens a little bit longer? Should we do a suggestion of 2 next audio clips, or should we do 1 audio clip? You know, should we suggest a playlist and a video? And it's going to give you different scenarios. Yo, your job would get significantly easier. And there's only one Ahmed for me, but there's millions of Ahmeds in the world, right, that need this.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even for a company like mine, for those that don't know, I have a startup, audia.io/register. We are trying to build a YouTube of audio. If I could ask these queries, like the thing that the Cisco guy, when he, Shyam, in his presentation, when he took an email, I mean, we have to understand this. They're taking raw words from an email. Hey, blah, 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 blah. It has zero context. They're taking the email, they're indexing it against an LLM that has all of the proprietary data that it's been trained on, because they use Palantir to trust and secure the training of that data. ChatGPT can't do that for an enterprise. And then it's saying, hey, read the words in this email, connect it to our data, and build us a fucking chart about our lack of inventory in the supply chain. That's insane. And I know Microsoft and other companies are trying to do that, but then it becomes a question of how Palantir is doing it differently. And I think if they end up scaling it, it could be big.
The average, let's go back. The average contract for Palantir is just north of $1 million, right? Like $1.1 million, something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah.
You need Palantir Foundry in order to use Palantir AIP. Let's just assume it's $1 million and $1 million. So the average contract, so you need AIP on top of Foundry, it's going to be another $1 million for you. You feel me? For $2 million, now you're a company that's worth $100 million, $200 million, $300, $1 billion, a few billion, right? Not a huge company by any measure, but a large company. And for an average price of $2 million, you have this tool right here. How many employees can this take care of? So if you can get rid of a few dozen employees, this pays for itself just by getting you lean.
And again, a lot of Palantir's goal is not only just to they're not trying to get rid of employees, they're trying to make them more efficient. The byproduct of that is that AI is going to get rid of some employees, right? I've hired people in the past that I don't use anymore because of ChatGPT. The question becomes, how can you become so efficient as an organization so you could hire other people in other parts of the company that aren't doing useless stuff because AI is just so much better at it? Like, imagine a software engineer that can actually solve and innovate for a company versus do remedial coding that AIP could figure out, right?
This is a very good comment by Captain Picard. The ontology allows those inferences to be accurate and have the right context within an organization. Yo, that digital twin, everyone's sleeping on it. That's the difference, right? That's the difference between data analytics and AI analytics, right? Because somebody was asking it essentially, what's the exact difference on it? That digital twin is absolutely freaking insane. If you guys want to understand what Palantir is, because there's a lot of new people here, I'm going to give you guys the easiest possible way to explain this so you guys can visualize this. You have Lego. Let's say you have 1 billion pieces of Lego, 1 billion. You cannot possibly go through them. Palantir would take a whole bag that was just dropped out of nowhere, color coordinated, shape coordinated, those little people coordinated, platform coordinated, and all that. That is what C3 AI does. That is what Databricks does. That is what Snowflake does. That's what they do. They can coordinate the entire thing for you. Fantastic. This is where the similarities for me stops. Palantir, while they're coordinating all of these things for you, is already giving you predictive measures of, hey, if you take these 50 pieces and combine them with these 80 pieces, and then you take 2 pieces from here, you can build a Starship Trooper. But if you do all of that, and then you take away these 12, but you add these 100 pieces, you can build the Empire State Building, so on and so forth. That is the difference. So very simply, that's what Palantir does. Not only is it helping you organize, it is already giving you predictive measures of how to be more efficient and how to actually do something with your information.
Agreed.
And that's applied for when they're taking information from space, the domain of space or air, and sending it to the land. That's not me saying it, that's what they're saying.
Bro, and see what's going on. You just talked about space. We got this comment here about macro geopolitics. Then we've got Cisco in terms of different web applications. Then we got JD Power. Then you got Cleveland Clinic. Then you got this healthcare opportunity. Then you got the DoD. You've got Russia, Ukraine. You got China. This is the most interesting company in the fucking world to analyze and understand on a day-to-day basis, because the opportunity, it doesn't mean they're going to do it. But if you're going to take a fucking bet, if you're going to invest some money into something that could be big, there are too many moving. It's the only other comparable is Tesla, and that's because Elon is a mogul type of figure that has so much around him. Not in terms of stocks. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just the coverage of trying to analyze what this could become. And it's Palantir. It's Palantir, baby.
I mean, look, and the craziest thing is, if this itself was Palantir, everybody would be amazed. You got to remember, this is their fourth platform, and then they have sub platforms, right?
That's why I like that Cisco talked about Apollo. He was talking about something we barely talk about because it's hard to understand it.
So Apollo just basically makes you connect with the government, from my understanding. That's all I understood. It takes
allows you to like simultaneously deploy stuff to like it. The way I understand it, bro, is like if you're Netflix and you're shipping an update in the app, Apollo lets you do it in a simulated environment before you ship it to like billions of people that have Netflix on their phone, right? Obviously, they do a lot of government stuff, but I don't even fully get it because it's that complex. CodeStrap tried to explain it once. I was like, I don't really get it. But
isn't he presenting today?
I think he's doing a workshop, not a live presentation with PwC. If he was live, that'd be amazing. That'd be awesome. So
this is Chris, bro.
Look at Chris. Chris talking about Snowflake is up, Palantir is down. Bro, I don't care about the stock price today, because if you're watching these presentations, the stock does not matter. What matters is what this could be. And then it's an execution risk. I always have said there's a massive execution risk, but at some level, this shit's, I think, going to be able to sell itself given the value it's providing, because there's just not that many other players that are able to offer this. Who's Palantir competing against to offer a product like this? Microsoft, I'll give you that. Snowflake, no, they just fucking acquired a company to try to do something like this. Who are they competing against? Databricks, Datadog, they do different things. They're not doing it in exactly the same format. I think Microsoft's maybe the biggest competitor with the Fabric software, but
Chris, it's plus, man, it's hard, bro. I'm gonna, oh man, my shoulders even hurt, man. It's hard for Palantir to be up, 150% year to date. It's hard, it's hard. So it's
those that don't know, Adam and Chris have had a bet for $2,000 on which one will outperform, and currently.
Yeah, what are we year to date for Snowflake? I'm just curious. It's hard, Chris. I feel you, bro. I feel you, man.
We love Chris, but this is fun. He says we're simping a little too hard. Look, I might be simping a little too hard, but I have constantly been saying the stock should be like at $9 over the past 2 weeks. And I've been obliterated by that statement because obviously the stock has done way better. This AIP, I said this last night on my live stream, this conference was the deal breaker for me. If I didn't feel that this was like really real, I would say that this run up is hype. I do not think this run up to $15 is hype, given what I'm seeing. And even if it might be hype because Wall Street investors don't know what the fuck they're investing in, they're just investing because it's AI. Maybe C3 AI is going to get them burned because they don't know what they're investing in. They're just investing to run. Palantir is not hype.
Chris, I love you and you make some banger of calls, but I'll tell you, you getting it wrong with Palantir quite a couple of times, and you right with so many other calls, and I think you're getting really tight that you wrong on Palantir, and you want it to go down just so you can be right on Palantir.
Well, I think Chris wants it to go down so he could buy some more. Because Chris 100%. Is not bearish against Palantir. He doesn't like the valuation right now. That's the difference. And I can agree with that. He's not bearish on Palantir, the company. Valuation's a little tight. But if AIP is validating the valuation, then it becomes a different game. And so that's what we're going to see. That's what we are going to see. Please tell me what calls Chris has made. He called SMCI at 70, Weight Watchers at 4, Duolingo at 70. TFC, it's
Facebook.
Yeah, but again, I want to remind people. Me and Chris started a Palantir Weekly podcast a year and a half ago. He's always been bullish on Palantir. The lack of sales, lack of growth. Remember, went from 41% to 18%, and the valuation running up in a month it can make a seasoned investor very scared about the investment, and from just a pure opportunity cost perspective. But if AIP is not hype, then it could be real.
Yeah, I just wanted to make it very clear. Chris is smashing it. You can't take that away. Absolutely smashing it.
And look, he's not
So-
alone. A lot of people think the valuation makes no sense. I'm one of the biggest Palantir bulls ever. I'm just like, bro, $30 billion company growing 18% year over year, barely doing $2 billion in revenue. Doesn't make sense. But growth companies never make sense if there is some validation to the growth story. With Tesla, energy, robo-taxis, whatever you want to call it, there is some validation there that enough people in the market believe could happen. With Palantir, I don't think there's been what could happen. What is that thing? And if AIP is that thing, then maybe the valuation's all right. It could be undervalued. All right, Adam, you're going to stay on while we watch these presentations? Or
It's on already?
Well, I shared my screen. They're showing some slides. It should be starting in like 2 minutes, 3 minutes maybe.
Yeah, I'm going to get out of here as soon as it starts. Go do my things.
Let's see some comments in Karp We Trust. How did you feel about Karp when he talked for the first 20 minutes?
Yeah, it's really good. He reiterated a lot of things that's already been saying. He didn't really say too many, interesting things. I believe it was the Bloomberg interview. I was just watching it. That basically, they asked him, "How's Ukraine doing?" He's like, "Why don't you ask the Russians?"
Dead ass. He said that.
Yeah, I believe that was that interview. I see a lot of quotes coming out. I'm rewatching that interview. It's pretty interesting.
I didn't even get to watch it. Bro, there was a short report on Palantir today. There's so much shit to cover. If you have any quick thoughts on the short report?
They're calling Palantir a consulting company, which was hilarious. They're completely lying. They have no artificial intelligence, which is hilarious because they're literally banging it out over here. It's so crazy. It's so freaking crazy that they're showcasing this whole AI, and they literally said they're not an AI company. They're literally a data company, a consulting company. That's it.
Yeah, and the short report is behind a $64 paywall. I'll be covering it. I might buy it. I don't even want to give it the credence of buying it to do the video on it. But they're trying to make money off hype, off short-term hype on the short report. All right, we're back. Thank you, Adam, for joining. It means a lot. I'm putting Adam's Twitter in the description. Please make sure to follow him. Talk to you later, man.
All right, we've got some incredible speakers left to follow, some incredible demos. Hope you're energized, hope you're caffeinated, and hope you're ready. Allow me to please introduce Justin Herman, CIO of Panasonic Energy North America.
Hi, everyone. My name is Justin Herman, CIO for Panasonic Energy North America. I'm extremely excited to be here today. And, during the break, I was chatting to a few of the keynotes, and there's a common thread that's coming out here is the partnership with Palantir and how we iterate with Palantir to create business value. And today I want to take a little bit of time just to share with you the Panasonic Energy North America, or PENA story, and how we've partnered with Palantir to create value within the enterprise itself. So behind me is one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite leaders. I won't tell you who that is. I'll let you search that and see if you can guess who that is. But what do we mean by the impossible? What I'm holding in my hand here, I'm sure many of you know what this is, but this is the highest quality, safest, most cost-effective lithium-ion battery. And a show of hands real quick, who drives EVs within this audience? Quite a few put their hands up, and you're welcome, by the way. There are between 3,000 and 10,000 of these lithium-ion batteries in every single EV on the road today, in an industry that has grown exponentially over the past decade. In 2011, there were approximately 22,000 EVs on the road, and it's projected in 2025, there'll be over 23 million on the road. So demand is only growing, and we need to be able to meet that demand. So at PENA, we started our operations in 2016. We shipped our very first cell in 2017. We reached 100 million cells shipped February of 2018, 1 billion 1 year later, and to date, we have shipped over 7 billion cells. This type of growth is not only nice to have, but it's an absolute necessity. So how was this made possible? Well, it was made possible by the vision of Panasonic and its leaders, as well as our journey towards achieving Industry 4.0. Now, Industry 4.0, as you all know, is a pretty loose term, right? We all have different meanings and exactly what that means. But let me explain to you at PENA what that means for us. So at PENA, when we talk about Industry 4.0, we really talk about integrating multimodal data into our manufacturing process. We look at upgrading legacy systems and manual processes and streamline them into more modernized versions of that. Discovering inefficiencies, but not just discovering the inefficiencies, acting upon those inefficiencies, and then leveraging the foundation of incremental value and agility to rapidly scale our capabilities through technology. And through cutting-edge use cases, we build a framework of robust edge integration that we're unable to unlock key capabilities for our business. What does this all lead to, right? What is the goal? The goal is to create a connected data infrastructure which drives value, where we can connect disparate data systems extremely fast and pull meaningful value from these various systems. This means, or this leads, I should say, to quality improvements, safety improvements, and also it frees up the time of our resources to focus on more value-added activities. And of course, there's always a multi-million-dollar ROI associated with these types of activities. So where did it all begin? Well, we like to reference Panasonic Energy as a 100-year-old company that really acts like a startup, right? And within our culture, within Pana's culture, we really take innovation and marching into the unknown as a core value, and it's ingrained into our culture. And by partnering with Palantir, we will further enable that innovation. So right over here is a quote that our president, Alan Swan, likes to mention quite a few times. And as you can guess, that group of 4,000 people is really referencing Pana, and it's pushing into the unknown and building towards and meeting an ever-increasing need. So I'd like to take a second and dig into what it really takes to achieve Industry 4.0. At Pana, we identified two challenges. The first one being business value versus speed, and the second, the smart factory versus traditional infrastructure. So for us, developing use cases was absolutely critical to demonstrating value to our key stakeholders. But investing in impactful use cases can be quite challenging and bandwidth intensive when you try to achieve this in advance of buy-in. In addition, when you look at the factories and the various machines and the variety of timelines that they were implemented and the data sources that it's producing, this introduces significant complexity into modernizing. So any amount of downtime for our operations can be extremely impactful. So of course, delivering value at speed keeps you current with the industry. But for us, it was really demonstrating value to our key stakeholders. And this was extremely important for us. And I recall one or two FounderCons ago, I can't remember the exact question that was asked of Dr. Karp, but his response to that was, take your timeline and cut it in half. And this really resonated with us at Pana, because that is exactly how we think. And with Palantir, we were able to do this. And now you might ask yourself the question, how were we able to do this? And I believe the key differentiating factor for us was the ontology itself. So right behind you is kind of a little eye chart, but this is the back end of our ontology model at Pana. And it's taking all the disparate systems and integrating the disparate data into a reusable, highly valuable data asset. To us, the ontology is more than a tool, right? It's really mapping up processes to create real enterprise value. Another eye chart for you. But once you have the ontology, right, and all your business processes can be contextualized within that ontology, you create what we call the manufacturing ontology. And once you have that, we can then connect through this any external systems to further compound the value, leveraging ontology SDK. So I'd like to talk to you about connected operations and one of our use cases. This use case in particular was in our electrode control tower, and it was delivered within 1 month. Actually, the first working model of this was delivered within 1 week, right? It involved a highly manual process where our engineer would literally take a thumb drive, plug it into the machine, wait for the data, take that same thumb drive, visually inspect the machine, download the data on the machine, and then run it through their models. This entire process took about 4 hours. Within 1 month, we were able to give them the tools that took that 4-hour process and now condensed it down to 15 minutes with significantly improved data integrity. So 5 months later, what we're looking at from a speed to value perspective is not only that one use case, we have 6 additional use cases. And these 6 additional use cases run over predictive maintenance, material traceability, really connecting our operations together and delivering contextualized data within the organization, which is driving value to our stakeholders. We have significant more use cases in the pipeline, so much so that our team is actually putting in some guardrails to make sure we can meet that demand. So to wrap it up, these quotes you see on the board are actually from our end users, right? Because at the end of the day, you want your end users to be happy with the solutions and the tools and the data and analytic tools that you're providing to them. And this was the reason why we have such excitement within the organization right now, has to do with our partnership with Palantir. The teams came together, and the most significant thing that I saw throughout this engagement so far has been our Palantir came in and understood our business processes, sat with the operators on the lines, understood their daily challenges, and then took that and leveraged the technology to solve those problems. So this helped Penda find value that we ourselves did not even know was there. So in closing, I would like to thank the Palantir team for everything they have done for us. Our partnership is strong. We're at our infancy. I am extremely excited to what we will achieve in the future and how we will achieve the impossible. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of the keynotes.
Again, another one that says, you know, they didn't just sell us a solution, they actually consulted with us, actually cared about our
Please
issues.
welcome Chief
That helps.
Executive Officer at Jacobs, Bob Pragada,
Oh.
EVP and President, Divergent Solutions
This is gonna be fun.
at Jacobs.
This is the
Shyam
guy that
Miller.
went on Jim Cramer's show and said Palantir's the real deal and turned them more bullish. Bob, here we go.
Well, thank you, everyone. Good day. It's a great privilege and honor to be here with everybody at Palantir. On behalf of the entire Jacobs team, I want to thank Palantir for the invite and the opportunity to speak to all of you. Before diving in, I did want to share with the group a bit of a personal story. This town, Palo Alto, has a very unique and special meaning to me. And today, as we were walking from the Sheraton with my colleagues down University Boulevard, it was a pretty reflective moment for me. And it was reflective from this context. There are 3 events that happened in this town that have forever changed my own life. The first was I did have the privilege and honor to maybe go to school down the street for grad school several years ago, but that definitely did set the course for things that I had the opportunity to do later in life. Secondly, I started off my career in the service, and so when I finished grad school, went back to the service, my first job out of the Navy was right here, back in the Bay Area, very close to Palo Alto. So that was unique, but that second one really wasn't the piece that was life-changing. My younger son was actually born about 3 kilometers away from here at El Camino Hospital while I was here. And then the third, which actually just happened recently, is I had the good fortune to send my older son to school here at Stanford. So my quick plug for Go Card, Go Stanford. It's great to be here in Palo Alto, and love to share some of those experiences as well. So maybe by a show of hands, because I know we have some clients in the room as well as some partners. Who here knows who Jacobs is? Okay, that actually was going to be more than I suspected. So interestingly enough, Jacobs is one of the world's largest engineering and technical services companies around, US-based. But before getting into some of the mechanics, I think it's important to set context on where we came from. We started off with deep engineering roots in the chemical process industry and over decades diversified into other markets. But what Dr. Jacobs started was, we're in the business of making our clients' business a better business, hard stop. And that's producing outcomes and providing solutions for some of the world's most difficult issues. So today, the end markets that we're in, critical infrastructure, think water, transportation, environment, energy and environment, everything going on around energy transition, advanced facilities, deep domain expertise in life sciences manufacturing, as well as semiconductor manufacturing, and then national security. We've been in the middle of some of the biggest missions around the world, supporting the US, UK, and Australian government. I won't bore you with all the statistics, but needless to say, we're a big company and we do a lot. We do a lot in the world. But what's probably more interesting, and I love the Simon Sinek reference on start with the why. You know, why do we exist as a company? Who are we? And really is, we are in the middle of some of the most big or the biggest megatrends that are affecting us in the world. And I list the one there, climate response. I heard a statistic the other day, is that it is kind of dark. So bear with me on the darkness, and then we'll bring it to light. If you think about the probability of some kind of nuclear holocaust, there is a probability there. I'm not even going to mention it. However, if you compare that to the probability, if we do nothing as a society on solving climate change, or at least slowing climate change with everything we're doing around climate response, you know, that's 100% probability that we won't exist. That's my dark comment. Let's get back to light. So what we're doing is we're in the middle, from that science-based domain expertise that we built over decades, of addressing each one of these issues. And kind of when you go around the matrix and you see it coming down to, I mean, what are all of these issues surrounded by in the physical world? Data, all about data. So our partnership with Palantir has really accelerated that effort on taking deep domain science-based experience, coupling that with strong data science and data platforms to really reinvent the way we're solving these issues for our clients. And so some common themes there. I think some of my predecessor speakers spoke to them. Speed, that goes without saying. You know, we at Jacobs, we can customize for a single client in a single market in a single geography, but being able to do that at scale across multiple sites around the world, that's what the Palantir partnership brings to us. And then specialization, you know, we have deep domain expertise in the science, and with Palantir, deep domain expertise in the data science, whether it be any of the platforms we're talking about today. That combination is powerful, and it leads to this. Our vision for the world is to take that deep domain science expertise, couple that with data science and data platforms, and make a positive impact in the world. We do have a use case. My colleague Shannon Miller is not going to join me on the stage. I'm going to leave the stage and give the stage to her. But look forward to interfacing and interacting with everyone moving forward. So thanks, everyone.
All right, so we're getting someone else from Jacobs now, talking about how they're utilizing AIP. Let's see what they're doing.
All right, thank you, Bob. Good day, everybody. So as Bob mentioned, I run our digital data, cyber, and cloud solutions business at Jacobs, where we're really focused on solving some of the most complex problems in critical infrastructure. And I've been really honored and excited to develop this partnership along with our team with Palantir to really solve the most complex problems for critical infrastructure and the solutions that are around that. As Bob mentioned, our goal at Jacobs is to create a safer, more resilient, and connected world. And I can't think of a use case that isn't more exciting than focusing on how we improve the water cycle for the entire planet. So if you think about this is critical for a lot of reasons. Not only climate change is stretching our need to expand our ability to leverage our resources, the need to reduce our carbon footprint, as Bob said, not soon, but quickly, very fast. And then, of course, the staffing shortages and the waves of retirements of some of our most experienced and excellent operators across the entire utility community. So although this might not be the most glamorous use case, our friend Bernardo at JD Power got me really excited about buying a new car. I probably don't need to buy a new car. I'm going to get you excited about how we're harnessing the power of artificial intelligence to improve water treatment. So we're going to see how AI acts as a co-pilot. Shyam did a great job showing how we set this up. From not only using it in real time to optimize decision-making while we're operating our utilities, but also when we think about when the stakes get higher in the wake of a massive storm, and then of course for long-term planning and how we deploy our assets going forward. So this allows our operators to interface with troves of data, complex data using natural language as we've seen today. So I'm really excited to show 3 use cases of what we're working on together with Palantir and what we've got getting deployed here to our customers very soon. All right, so first up, we're going to talk about how we're operationalizing our data. This is Jacobs' Aqua DNA platform, where we combine our deep domain expertise in wastewater treatment, coupled with Palantir and the Foundry platform and AIP. So first up, if you take a look at this, we're looking at the entire city. So this is an entire wastewater treatment system on our Aqua DNA platform powered by AIP. So if you think about it, it encompasses millions of people. It's the city's core infrastructure, it's the drainage, the sewage, the treatment plants, and everything that happens in this complex system. So it's the valves, the sensors, and the catchment basins. And at any moment in time, our operators are making thousands of decisions to optimize what they're doing. So if you think about it, first of all, if you send too much water to a wastewater treatment plant, you could flood it, causing millions of dollars in equipment damage. That would take down the city's ability to treat wastewater. And if you don't manage your storage appropriately ahead of a storm, you could run out of critical capacity, causing an overflow and leaking polluted water to the local environment. So to guide these decisions, systems are typically outfitted with numerous sensors. And what we've heard from our utility operators is in the last 2 years, they've captured more data than in the last 20 years combined. Think about how difficult that is. The flow of information, no pun intended, becomes very difficult for them to leverage and optimize their systems. And on top of this, with all these assets being added to the networks, it introduces a new vulnerability for cyber attacks. All right. So in the face of all these challenges, let's see how Aqua DNA helps me monitor our day-to-day operations with the data that we already have. So this is just day-to-day operations in a utility treatment network. So first of all, everything is centralized in Foundry. We've been able to connect all of our data from design, operations, security, and bring it all together within the ontology. So this means we can compound our returns and introduce and have fewer vulnerabilities. So we're able to rapidly ingest and process all the disparate sets of data, which were previously disconnected, creating confusion and often unproductive noise in the system. So again, it's all being processed real time into standardized, reusable models or our ontology. So AIP is enabling me to proactively monitor for the changing conditions in the system that might require human attention, such as maybe a cyber breach or even a clog. We were talking last night, surprisingly, one of the things that we find often in clogged wastewater treatment systems are blue jeans. We were hoping to maybe recycle some jeans for y'all here today, but we didn't do that. So anyway, so we'll see here that there's an alert, that there's a potential clog. Let's assume it's some Levi's jeans in one of our drains. So I'm gonna zoom in on this clog and see what action I need to take. So again, we've got real-time digestible data of what's happening and where this clog fits into our system. It is going to require maintenance, so I obviously want to understand how urgently I need to dispatch a crew. And I also know that a storm is forecasted for this weekend, and I want to make sure that I'm taking that into account in how I make prioritized decisions. So with that in mind, I use the AIP assistant to help pull in that forecast for the upcoming storm, and it simulates it across the entire system. So AIP is going to pull in the weather forecast data. It's going to bring it in as a new layer and estimate how much wastewater is going to flow into the system. The AI is then able to call on our specialized Jacobs design simulation models, such as our flood modeler platform, to really understand the impacts of this storm. So I can see now that we're getting 2 new alerts with this simulation, with one showing that this clog is going to result in an overflow. So clearly this warrants a high priority fix. I'm going to go ahead and assign maintenance in the platform, and then that automatically updates their schedule and it redirects the crew. This conversational real-time scenario model is really, it's a huge step forward from the complex manual work that would have been required to perform this analysis in the past and get that maintenance crew to address the clog before the storm comes. And this is really due to our ability to query massive amounts of data in real time and map out different scenarios so we can make the critical decisions in a timely manner. So next, we're going to amp up the stakes. So we've got a storm coming, and we're going to see how we can leverage our Aqua DNA platform to manage the forecasted storm. So here, I'm looking again across the entire system, but now I'm seeing how this storm is going to impact us in the future. So the platform tracks where wastewater is entering the system and continually updates our forward projections, feeding our risk models and giving us alerts. Only now, in addition to those alerts, we have a few types of adjustments that are going to take place automatically without me needing to dispatch any crew. These are being executed by our AI agents that we've been talking about today in some of our other stories. They're trained in our system's historical data, and they help adaptively keep things in check throughout the entire storm. They're combining machine learning with our expertise and our flood modeler platform to really define optimal system performance. It's important to know I'm still in full control. I can monitor all the actions that the agents are taking, their effects, and adjust, override, or disable their behaviors. But they're taking care of hundreds of optimal decision-making adjustments for me, which could include things like adjusting valves, diverting wastewater, and updating some of the treatment parameters. So with that being said, some actions are clearly too consequential to be taken automatically, right? So here we can see that AIP has surfaced an alert. It's showing me that there's a risk of an overflow in the next 2 hours, and it's going to make some recommended diversions to avoid that overflow. However, it is showing that it requires my input to take action. So I'm going to dig into those recommendations to understand what's driving it and the potential trade-offs associated with it. So it helps me see the path leading to the overflow risk, as well as its recommended diversion of the wastewater from a northern to a southern catchment basin. I can see the projections and the predicted metrics, helping me understand the full picture of what's likely to happen if I make the diversion or if I don't. And so there's a trade-off here, as you can see. On one hand, there's a 24% risk of overflow if I take no action. And on the other hand, the proposed diversion routes wastewater to a less effective or efficient wastewater treatment plant, increasing the total treatment cost that's above a threshold parameter that I have in the system. So this is why the AI is unable to facilitate this action automatically. It needs my input and my approval to progress. I might also want to dig into what's behind these calculations, so I can take a look at what assumptions, data models, calculations, and simulations were behind making that recommendation. I can do that right here as well. So based on this information, I do decide that the best path is to go ahead and in fact approve this diversion. I approve the diversion in the system. Downstream actions flow automatically, and approval processes and communications kick off as well. I can monitor them and see how it plays out to ensure it plays out as I expected. So in a situation like this, the automatic capture of all of our decisions and reasoning is essential. We need the platform to keep a full history of all of our actions, whether it was done by a human or by the AI, along with the associated context and the state of the world. And we can do that all within AIP. This enables me to show regulators why I took decisions, what the circumstances, and what alternatives were presented when I made those decisions. I can also use this to inform future operations, future operations planning, as well as train the AI for future events. The great thing is all of this is controllable. AIP allows me to be in the loop of all of our AI automations, the data they're using, the patterns of reasoning that they're relying on, the guardrails that are set around it, and it makes sure that it's performing accurately. It also enforces these guardrails. So the level of actions, the criticality where a human needs to be in a loop is decided ahead of time. And then we can also dig in further to those actions, how it was all generated, and of course, create a report at any time. All right, so in the last scenario, we're going to look at how we leverage AIP for future planning long term. So in the aftermath of the storm, it's sort of, it's ticked off a few things for me. I want to think about long-term planning of my wastewater treatment facilities. So I want to re-examine my long-term plans. I want to not only use historical information, but also forward-looking data, right? So to really create a complex scenario for my simulation. So let's go ahead. We're going to build a case study that looks 30 years into the future. See if that played out. All right. So we're first going to start with our current world and layer in things like population growth, urban development, and of course, climate change. We're first going to ask the AIP assistant to pull in plans for development and the forecasted population growth. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the top 10% of storms last year and then add 25% to that, which is what's been recommended by the AI. And that's going to build our case study for future planning. So now I want to test how our current infrastructure would fare in this scenario. So as the simulation runs, it shows me that there's several overflow risks. I want to look into the infrastructure level changes to prevent this from happening well into the future. So in the past, being an engineer, I know I used to do this. I'd sit down and work on simulations and think about different analyses and simulations that I would do to prevent this. And it would have taken maybe months or years to really think about what the potential impacts are. So now with AIP, we can use this immediately in real time to help us understand what exactly can be done. So what it shows me is adding wastewater treatment plants or storage tanks would of course solve this problem, but at a huge monetary and environmental cost. So we're going to see if we can improve our network's resilience by improving our ability to divert wastewater within the system. So for example, I asked the AIP assistant if any wastewater treatment plants or tanks have spare capacity in the system, and it identifies 3 for me. I then ask for it to make recommendations or adjustments to the system to improve or rebalance capacity. So it takes into account all the other factors that I've outlined, population growth, urban development, and it recommends that I consider installing 2 new pipes. So I can adjust this further, but for now, I'm just going to go ahead and generate a report that captures this case study, gives me my recommendations for my stakeholders, shows me all of the data and simulations that went into the analysis. And again, if you think about it, this would have taken us a long time to pull this all together with probably a lot of different opinions around what it looked like, and tweaking any of those assumptions would have, created a lot of recycle and churn. So we're really excited about where we're going. You can see we're developing an end-to-end solution that brings everything together, whether that's security for mission-critical infrastructure. It provides control that keeps humans in the loop at every step of the way where you prescribe it. And it's real time. It provides us actionable AIP assistance to deliver those in-the-moment decisions for simulations, long-term planning, and it helps us make sense out of the massive volumes of data that we're creating all of the time. And it gives our operators this natural language interface to interact with to really make these complex decisions when they need to be making them. And of course, it always has the ability to show us the context, the inputs, why decisions were made. I'm excited, if you can't tell, about our relationship with Palantir, mostly because it's going to allow us to solve problems at a pace and a scale, and it's really that pace, right, that's going to have a tremendous impact on the world around us for all of our people, our customers, our stakeholders. And although we talked about just wastewater treatment today, I hope you see the applicability to a lot of different markets or industries and sectors around how we can leverage the power of AIP, deep domain expertise, as Bob talked about, to really improve our world around us. So thank you very much.
Please welcome from HCA Healthcare, AVP of Clinical Operations, Canaan Stage, and Director of Management Engineering, Ben Spears.
All right, this is the last one. HCA Healthcare. Here we go.
Thank you all. It's really great to be here and to be able to share a little bit of our experience with you. As introduced, I am Kanan Stage. I'm the AVP of Clinical Operations, a registered nurse by trade.
I'm Ben Spears. I'm a Director of Management Engineering for CT&I, and historically, I've been on the labor management side. And that's, I think, important part of the story is historically there's conflict between these groups. And for those not in healthcare, I'll give you an example. When I was dating my wife, who was a nurse, her friends met me, found out what I did, and they were all petitioning for her to break up with me. I won them over, like I won Kanan over, but there is conflict historically, and you'll see why that is important.
I think that's a great story to kind of paint that picture, and kind of what we're going to tell you a little bit about is how our teams come together and how we've been able to deliver a step change in healthcare that we're very proud of, and we hope to see kind of continue to grow throughout healthcare. I'm going to start with telling you a little bit about our organization, a little bit about our background, and really focus on the people part, the piece that I think is important. And then I'm going to turn it over to Ben and let him share a little bit of the data part. There's a lot of people here that I'm sure are really interested in that. That's just really not my cup of tea, and hence why this relationship works so well and oftentimes works not at all. So HCA Healthcare is over 180 hospitals throughout the United States, with a few in England as well too. Our impact that we believe we have in healthcare is really painted perfectly in these numbers. 93,000 nurses work for our organization. And one of the things that I know you all are very well aware of is that healthcare experienced quite a shake in these last couple of years with the pandemic and the challenges that brought. And one of those prominent challenges was around staffing and our ability to deliver the right patient care that we were trying to achieve. That affected our organization as it affected many other organizations. And it's what led to our desire as an organization to think about things differently. Our leader, Dr. Schlosser, created the Care Transformation and Innovation Department or team or wing within our organization that is focused on taking a step change in healthcare and really delivering that through clinically led innovation. And I call that out because that's where I want you to know why my importance on the team is just a little bit more important than Ben, that clinically led part. You saw that too, right? Jokes aside, I think that's been part of the lesson that we've learned throughout healthcare, and why we've had challenges in progressing and moving forward has been not our inability to listen, but where we were listening and how we were applying that. Ben mentioned the relationship between the process improvement teams and our financial teams within our organizations, and then the clinicians themselves, and somewhat of that balance or that approach that takes place day in and day out. And a lot of that comes from the ability to have access and understanding to data and knowing what's there to be able to have those discussions. For us, our Care Transformation and Innovation team, our focus starts with building out really from the bottom up and starting with our clinicians. We have 2 hub locations, which are really an opportunity for us to embed our members of our team side by side with clinicians, learn from those clinicians, understand what their challenge points may be before we even begin to design or create operational challenges or challenges to those operations that are in place. We then have 2 other larger facilities, and why that's important to kind of touch on is the realization that we're in an area that requires a strong balance of risk and reward. The understanding that if these are high stakes and high pressure environments, changes that we make to our healthcare process can have very positive impacts on our patients. They also could result in some possible risk that we wouldn't want to see. And with litigation that was brought up earlier being a significant part of healthcare, unfortunately, we have to balance the idea that if we're going to make changes, we need to be sure that those changes that we take into account what the downstream impacts could be. And the very best way to do that is to do that on site with a team and understand the challenges that they're having. The other part of that is being over 180 hospitals, there's a lot of customization that goes into the way that each individual hospital operates and each individual unit within that hospital operates. And so understanding the why, the Simon Sinek, I'm a big believer in him as well too, so I loved hearing that today. Understanding the why of those challenges and why they may deviate from what is maybe an accepted standard of care is really going to help us understand how do we attack that challenge and that change and move forward in our process. So when we challenged the idea of taking on first and foremost staffing, particularly coming right out of the pandemic, there was a lot of people that believed this was the right answer. It can't be done. We can't theoretically change the way that we approach this. Staffing for many, many years has been about taking what's available to you. And as team members come in and labor team members come in, they give us their availability. They work on the shifts that they have. We wanted to take a little bit of a different approach, and we wanted to understand and value our employees somewhat differently. And so we presented this idea to a few different companies. And this was a direct quote from one of those companies. It cannot be done, what you're trying to achieve. And another organization that we met with, we worked through part of the project, and we realized that maybe it couldn't be done with this group and this team. And then we found a new partner, and that partner was Palantir. And I think what you'll see on the screen is that there were a lot of similarities and a lot of alignment between our organization and our thoughts, and where we could take the steps to improve that and to put this process into place. We've heard several things called out today: the speed of deployment, the ability to integrate with our teams and be on site. And I'm very fortunate to share actually a few photos of our teams working together right on site. This is at two of our innovation sites, two different innovation sites. And on this picture to the far left is actually one of our groups of Palantir team members, and someone here is in the audience from that team that we both very much appreciate the opportunity to work with day in and day out. Because what's different about Palantir for us has been the willingness to understand the why, the willingness to embed themselves with our teams. In fact, sometimes push us, hey, we haven't been on site in a little while, can we go back? That type of relationship and that type of interaction is really what has led us forward into being able to build forward a platform that is transformational. There's no other way to say it. And what I think it's done as a nurse myself, it's empowered nurses to have better conversations about needs, better conversations about how we support each other, and better conversations about how we deliver the very best care we can possibly have. And I will say that over time, I've learned to appreciate that process improvement idea and how we can work together through that. And so at this point, what I want to do is turn this over to Ben for him to to provide you a little bit of the details around how we achieve this new process and format.
Perfect. Thanks, Gannon. So this is what it looked like today. So unfortunately, you have what are in the black boxes compared to the orange boxes is we didn't know, and we had no insights today on those black boxes. We didn't know what the original schedule that was posted was, because we didn't have change data capture, and so many changes happen after the schedule post. And as a company, we talk about our scale, but what that looks like is 2,000 nursing departments with 3,000 leaders, us trying to teach them what's the right way to balance and post a schedule. We have 20% turnover within those roles, and it's very tough to get to those 3,000 individuals and tell them this is the right thing to do and this is the right schedule to post. And we saw a lot of variation, we saw a lot of bias, and to be honest, we didn't really know what that looked like. We had assumptions, but we flipped over to future state. We now have all these data points. We're able to see on the staff input side, system inputs. We turned it on and we're like, oh my gosh, we understand we need change management because this is a big change, but I don't think we truly appreciated what the change was going to be until we were able to drill into our data and see some of the practices that have gone on. So how our process works is we have the staff give us information about themselves. So we have the talent profile to understand what kind of roles they can do on the unit. We get their schedule preferences. We marry that up with volume demand prediction, business logic to generate a schedule. We want that schedule to be 95% of the way done. We want the manager to then review that schedule before posting. We strongly believe that the automation is not going to do 100%. There's going to be nuances that the manager needs to do. But in the current process that we have today, because it can't be done, it's relying on that nurse leader. And that's 10 to 20 hours going on every month. With the nurse leader having to build the schedule across 2,000 departments, 12 months a year. This new process has been very successful. So we've been able to get that number down to 1 hour. So 95% reduction at some of the best utilized hospitals and departments that we have, and we're really excited. So this is what it looks like. We're utilizing a handful of different workshops throughout the process. We have the personal workshop where staff members are able to enter information about when they want to work, request PTO, those type of things. We have the staffing workshop is where the managers will go in, run the schedule, hit the automation, come back, do their edits, post the schedule. And then we have the staffing workshop and the facility workshop to take care of all the edits that need to happen after the schedule post. Because we need insight and we need overview, the CT&I team and our executive leaders can use those dashboards to understand the process, look for ways to improve, and educate and coach that feedback loop back to those nursing leaders. We really hit on the value to the nursing leadership, but to the organization as a whole, having ontology and having this data is transformational for us. Today, what it looks like, a bunch of people like me are looking at the tea leaves and looking at the smokes and trying to figure out what contract labor and what kind of premium utilization we're going to have this month and next month, and do we need to bring in these contractors at this rate to kind of fill our needs. And we were able to build screens where we can turn that art into a science, and we can have everyone calculating it the same way. And it's so easy to access the data. It's so easy for us to merge the data with other things. The other use case that's been brought up is how do we, now that we have all this information, we can almost do a forensic level analyze of each of these staff member schedules. Let's marry that up with turnover information and see what are the root causes when we have these turnover. Can we identify issues, whether that be orientation process? So today we know we have a best practice of what orientation should be. We've turned it on. We have the insight. We know what we say we should be doing, and what's going on in our hospitals are completely different. So let's tie turnover rates to preceptors, or when we say we want one preceptor for the whole 12 weeks, are we actually doing that? Or are we bouncing them around 12 other people and they're not feeling involved? So this is kind of the roadmap that we are. So we kicked off the partnership in January. We've quickly scaled. I'd say this slide is a little optimistic and it looks pretty. We've had some road bumps along the way. I'd like to share that with this group. I think the biggest thing in innovation, right, and especially in healthcare, as Kane mentioned, is there's this desire to always be perfect. And when we have bugs or we have these fixes, it's even the quote I heard yesterday, it's rewarding to close the ticket. And I think we've had what happened is we kind of got into this 3-week period at the end of March and leaking into April where we have our short-term architecture as we transition away from our existing solution. And as we move to the long-term architecture, we had some, I'll call it, issues with the short-term architecture. And we were spending a lot of time trying to fix what the problem was right now. But when we go to August, all that work's going to be throwaway. And so we had to look ourselves in the mirror and be okay with breaking a couple things and saying, in the long term, to hit our medium-term goals, it's going to be okay to break some things at this smaller scale. And that's really what this department's about, is understanding that it's okay to tinker, it's okay for things to break in a safe environment. We're may ask our department leaders at these hospitals to wear a little bit of the burden for the short term, knowing that we're going to build a product so much better 6 months from now, and that product's going to be able to serve all of our nursing leaders across the company. The one thing I want to say in this process, and really want to call out Palantir, because I've been really impressed, is they understand we're very aligned in what our goals are. And there's been moments, especially going from 25 departments to 50 departments, where the scale, the difference between the departments we were expecting to see, or that we experienced at the 25 moving to 50, there was differences. And so we even gave them out, hey, here's a short-term fix. We're going to give you this short-term fix, and it's going to create technical debt. It's going to make life harder down the road. But they're like, no, we do not want to do that. We're going to do the right thing. We know it's going to be harder now. We're going to do extra work now so we can hit our goals. And so a common theme today has been speed, and we're quickly transitioning out of that, building the product and transitioning into speed. And so we plan on going to 5 more facilities in August, with ultimately the goal to hit 40 by March of next year. And trust was another big thing that came up this morning. I think without Palantir, could this be done? I'm not sure, but I do stand up here today and have the trust and the faith in our team to hit our goals. And I know a lot of them are in the room or listening, and want to give them a thank you as well.
Yeah, and I think the last thing that I will add to that is, when we were younger, we were probably the guys in the back of the class that were told we were disruptors, right? And that was not a good thing to be. But in healthcare, when we've been able to disrupt some of our general thinkings and some of our general thoughts and do it with the support and the power that Palantir has brought with the data, it truly does become a very valuable resource. The feedback from our frontline team members obviously is one that can be a little bit uncomfortable at times, but overall, time and time again, we hear the words "thank you," and those are the words that we want to leave with the Palantir team as well too. And that is thank you for an exceptional partnership, and we look forward to sharing our story with you more. So, hope you all have a great day.
Okay. I think that's it. Are we done? Looks like we're done. That's it.
And a final round of applause for our customer speakers today. All right, we're getting ready to break for lunch. We've got a packed afternoon planned for all of you with a customer demo expo, a series of meetups, a series of whiteboarding sessions. Before we close things out, I'm very honored to introduce a member of the team, Morgan Schwartzman, who is behind the past few Foundry Cons and today's AIP Con to close things out.
Hi, everyone. I am responsible for all personalized agendas for FoundryCon and now AIPCon. I used to do this in a very manual and painstaking process via several spreadsheets and data collecting sources and templates. This process was extremely error-prone, had bandwidth and functionality limitations, and if there were any scheduling updates during the programming, there was no real way for us to communicate that to you. AIPCon is now completely powered by Foundry. I use dynamic scheduling, a product that launched at last FoundryCon in February, just 4 months ago, to personalize over 100 hundreds of agendas tailored to all of your goals. And even the people who were on the wait list, you also got your personalized agendas. You saw our keynotes ran slightly over today. So we're going to go in and adjust your schedules. Previously, to make a change like this, it would have taken a crazy amount of hours and manpower. Using AIP, instead of making an individual change to all agendas, I can simply provide the LLM a description of the change that I need to be made. It can be applied to all individual agendas at once. Now imagine some customers of you here with us today are responsible for managing flight swaps for hundreds of aircrafts when they need maintenance. Others are staffing thousands of nurses across hospitals. Still others are managing complex production schedules. It's the same product across industries. The adjustment that we just made live together has now automatically propagated and updated any downstream effects to meetings and other sessions. If you've opted in for our text messages, you will receive your scheduling update directly to your phone. For those of you who dialed into the live stream, thank you for joining us. We hope that you take the stories that you've heard this morning and continue building on them. We encourage you to participate in this trusting environment and connect with each other. And now, on to lunch.
Okay. What an ending. What an ending. Look at that room. Look at all these people wearing all these suits. All these people, high important decision-making people. They're about to go eat lunch. It's 12:30 on the west coast of the United States of America in Palo Alto, California. Thank you, 758 people, for still being here. I'm going to spend the next 10, 15 minutes wrapping up what I thought was a pretty phenomenal conference, exceeded my expectations. We're going to do that right now. 10 minutes. I took a bunch of different notes. I'm going to be reading off some of that stuff and give my overall thoughts, essentially, on what I think we saw. And I would love to know your thoughts as we get into the comments as well. Let me just zoom in just a little bit more. Okay, just a little bit more. Here we go. All right. Palantir's AIP Con just ended. I have a lot of thoughts, a lot of stuff I want to get into, but the biggest takeaway I have, and I think everyone who watched even one out of the 6 presentations will be able to resonate with, is that clients trust Palantir. Now, why is this so important? Why is this necessary, especially in this new age of AI that we're getting into? Alex Karp, who's did an interview on Bloomberg today, has basically been saying for the past 6 months, really the past couple of years, because they've been building this for a long time, but the past 6 months, that if you cannot organize data effectively in a way that's secure and trustable, has guardrails, auditability, etc., no organization on the planet, no enterprise, no government, no nonprofit, no one will allow you to have proprietary data. Proprietary just means they own the data, like a hospital owns their patient data, right? It's all proprietary to them in order to train LLMs. Now, why does this matter? LLMs have fundamentally architected LLMs have fundamentally re-architected the paradigm by which humans engage with software. It is a new world. What is an LLM? It's a large language model. So instead of typing into Google that indexes billions of websites, you type something that has been trained on all of that content in the first place, and then all of that content that's been trained within an LLM gives you an answer. In order for that LLM to be valuable and drive business intelligence, the data it's trained on needs to be properly secured. And this is one of the defining things I've heard from every single person that was at this conference, from Cisco, from JD, from Cleveland Clinic, from Panasonic, from Jacob, from HCA Healthcare. All of them are saying that not only do we trust Palantir, they listened to us about our concerns. They worked with us to try to build out a specific solution that was architected for us. And as a result of that, we were happy to give them our proprietary data to work within our LLMs to train those large language models to then drive business intelligence for us. So my biggest takeaway is that if AI is the exponential S-curve we all think it can be in a variety of industries, energy, healthcare, hospitals, etc., then the only thing that differentiates a company that's trying to build AI infrastructure for an enterprise, for a government, for a military, is if that data is securely operated. I don't think that's the only moat, but I think that's one hell of a moat. And it doesn't seem like there's many companies on the planet that can do that. Snowflake, as a competitor to Palantir, just acquired a company to try to help them be able to do that. Palantir already has these products in the hands of clients doing it because they've been able to showcase the value that it has been. So that's the first top level raw thought I have. AIP is secure, and clients believe it is secure. A couple of quotes that I have from some of the clients. Cisco, the VP of engineering, he said, "We trust Palantir." Cleveland Clinic, "We needed a partner, not an existing solution." Panasonic, "Palantir actually listens to us and then helps us build solutions." So for everyone that says Palantir is a consulting firm, by the way, a short report came out today. How ironic, on the day of the conference. We'll cover that in another video, where they say Palantir is just a consulting firm. It has a big retail army. It's a black box software. They're not really AI. Essentially, they said their AI is fraud driven. To call them a consulting firm is not totally inaccurate. The problem is the implication of that is that you don't think a consulting firm can scale. And that's what we're in this for, right? We're not investing in Palantir for them to work with 1 to 5 clients. We want them to work with 1,000 clients. Well, the question becomes, can a consulting firm actually scale? My response to this is that the network effects built by actually building products that are tailored for an organization are massive. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say you spend 18 months with an oil company to really build them something special. Or, I mean, let's even take Panasonic. Panasonic's entire example was, let's use JD. JD was actually a little bit better one. JD's entire example is Palantir worked with us to build a large language model that made sense. They listened to all of our concerns. And over the course of whatever it was, 12, 18 months, we were able to build a really meaningful product. Well, if you're JD and you've done that, when Palantir introduces the next product, who are you going to go with? You're not going to go with some random salesman that is calling up your engineers and trying to get them to buy some type of it's going to be the company that worked with you for 18 months, which is why BP still uses Palantir, because Palantir consulted with them for years to be able to build out their product. In fact, they made them work exclusively with them in the oil and gas industry, at least from the big guys, because they wanted their software so badly and they didn't want their competitors to have a chance to get it. So in that context, it is really, really important to consult with the client when you're building them not an out-of-the-box solution, not something they can download from a website, but something that transforms their business. And what are you investing in? Are you investing in a company that you can just download some of their software, or are you investing in a company that is going to drive transformational results via an AI infrastructure tech stack that you're building and implementing across an organization? And if that's the case, then it seems like Palantir gets the job done, which means the network effects of that are upscaling existing clients, but also those clients telling other clients about how good of a job that Palantir was able to do, which is what Alex Karp, the CEO, just said in the Bloomberg interview today. He said, "We released a song and everyone is singing it." everyone's playing our music. There's a bunch of radio stations, he's talking about their clients, basically playing their song, which is Palantir's AIP product, to all these other different people. And as a result of that, that is what's leading to a massive network effect in terms of the consulting scalability for Palantir. So those are my high-level raw thoughts. The first thought is that clients actually trust Palantir, which it seems to be a really unique differentiated moat to be able to sell this AIP platform. And the second biggest thing is that Palantir is building customized, tailored solutions via AIP that transform an organization's capacity to be able to either grow revenue or cut costs, which is what an organization needs to do. And as a result of that, that is the ingrown network effect, especially when that drives organic demand without you having to hire a massive sales force. I mean, if Palantir can scale AIP without needing a crazy big sales force like Snowflake or CRM or any of these guys, that is going to be muy bueno for margins, but it's also going to be really good because the product's actually scaling because customers actually want it organically. Essentially, they don't have to be sold the product to be able to understand why the product is good. Okay, so those are my top level raw thoughts. Now, let's get into some deeper thoughts on the actual presentations I saw. So I'll cover the presentations in other videos a little bit more deeper, but I want to highlight a couple of core things that I saw that were important. The first one is JD. Okay, so for those that don't know, JD is a consumer intelligence company. They've been around for a long time. They have billions of data points, and all those billions of data points are essentially hoarded with them, and then they license that out. They use it in a lot of different ways. They provide a lot of intelligence and reports. It's kind of like Nielsen for advertising. They do a ton of ratings, and they create all these reports, and then they give them to organizations, et cetera, et cetera. JD Power is trying to build a consumer-facing product for clients that can use their essentially software for in the example that they showed, to buy a car, right? So if I want to buy a car, how can I buy a car in a more effective way? Right now, if you're trying to buy a car, you would go to Google, be like, which four-seat sedan is good for me to buy? Or like Honda Civics that are under 20,000 or whatever you would type in, right? The example we saw here was that instead of leveraging GPT-4 from OpenAI, essentially ChatGPT, right, and implementing that within your organization, JD Power created a business and consumer use case for a AI product that they can then put into businesses and then also put in to the hands of consumers, where someone can type in, I want an electric hybrid, I want in a hybrid car, this price, blah, 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 type in a bunch of details, and then it gives you results automatically. And that result is not just some result that you would get on Google. That result is indexed across thousands of other different results that could then be paired with all these different charts and modules, et cetera, that create a way to access information, which is what this whole game is about when it comes to AI. How quickly and effectively and efficiently can you access information that changes the trajectory of your business or the trajectory of the life cycle for the customer that's using your product? Now, the interesting thing here is, why did they use AIP over ChatGPT? Their argument was ChatGPT is useless. And this was really interesting when he said that. And the reason he said ChatGPT is useless is because not only is it hallucinating in the context of giving all the wrong info, it's not trained on anything proprietary. It's cut off after September 2021. Now, obviously, ChatGPT is going to get better and better and better. But in this moment, and it takes a long time for it to get better, right? It's not just going to happen immediately. In this moment, the proprietary nature of that data implemented within an organization, and if ChatGPT does get better, it has to be in organizations. So Microsoft has to sell it somehow to clients so that they can be able to use it in order for it to have any business value. If it doesn't have any business value, there's no true organizational value for the company that's trying to be able to use it. So from JD Power, I thought one of their biggest things was about how can we use Palantir's essentially AIP platform to be able to build our products outside of what exists on the market currently, because whatever exists on the market is not really doing it for the stuff that we're trying to do. Now, the next biggest thing I want to talk about, and this will be the last thing, again, I'll cover the other stuffs in different videos as I get a chance to watch them more. This was the other final thing that stood out to me. So Shyam Sankar, when the CTO of Palantir, when he was showing the demos, showed an email about inventory being pasted into the AIP terminal. The email was literally like, hey, we're running low on inventory here, blah, 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 blah. And that's it, like 3 sentences. He takes that email about inventory, posts it into the AIP terminal, and then AIP creates models, simulations, charts, etc. in response to a question against an email. The reason this is so important is because a casual email is just words. It has no context. That email is being indexed across an LLM. That LLM is trained on proprietary data, like how much inventory, the Japan factory has. And then it's giving you responses in seconds on what to do, how to go forward, how you would use this in a different way, how this and happen, what higher up to talk to, blah, blah, blah. All these things you would spend hours, if not weeks or days, trying to figure out an answer to. is done in seconds because the model is trained on data and then indexed against the ontologies. And the technical part of this is just the data that's not siloed across an organization under the hood to be able to get an answer. So the idea that you could do this with just an email, and this was only in the context of supply chains. So when you're thinking about it, it's like, okay, so in the supply chain context, you were able to show something really amazing. What else can you do going forward in a lot of other different organizations as well, and in a lot of other different use cases, which is, the thing I really liked about this conference. Healthcare was a big deal as well. HCA Healthcare, Cleveland Clinic, nursing, staffing, all of these different issues. I was actually at the hospital this morning for some personal reasons, not for me, but for some family. And I didn't even know Palantir went to $15.22. I didn't even know there was a bear report. Like literally Chris called me when I was at the hospital. He was like, yo, did you see the short report? By the way, Chris said it was bullshit for everyone who's afraid that Chris agreed with it. Chris was like, this is such bullshit. But I didn't even know because I was at the hospital this morning, right? And so I come back from the hospital. I get ready to do the live stream, and I'm seeing these directors at major institutions like the Cleveland Clinic basically saying the nursing, the staffing, the wait times, the ability for us to query patient data almost simultaneously to be able to drive better outcomes for our patients is done within seconds because of Palantir's AIP. I'm sure everyone has probably had someone in the hospital at one point that's close to them. When you see something like that and you realize, oh, this is not a game anymore. This is not, hey, ChatGPT, write me an essay in the style of Shakespeare. It's like, no, this is life or death at some level. And when it becomes a question of life or death, and it becomes a question of a hospital actually being empowered to use data in a way that makes it easier for the customer, which is the patient, so that they don't die, so that they're able to survive, they're able to live another day. This is where you start to see AI is not just something that can better recommend a YouTube video and in the way Google wants to use it. AI is not something that can just give you an answer from Bard. AI can save people's lives. And that was the more transformational thing to me in the question of Palantir. Alex Karp said that 13% of hospital beds in the United States are powered by Palantir. I did not know that. Apparently he said that a week ago. I guess I missed it. 13% of hospital beds in the United States. There's a lot of hospital beds in the United States. Think of how many hospitals there are just in your city or in your town. 13% of that means there's a lot of ultimately platform usage from Palantir across the entire United States, which is why the NHS argument to me makes so much sense, because of what Palantir was able to do with Cleveland Clinic, which is one of the largest academic institutions in the world or in the United States when it comes to hospitals and healthcare. If they were able to do that, they would do 1,000x what they're able to do for the NHS, because the NHS is managing 70 million people's patient data. And so the healthcare opportunity is just absolutely massive to me. And I think that healthcare opportunity is going to be big. Someone asked, are there any speakers after lunch? There are not any speakers for us after lunch. If you were actually at the conference, you would be able to see it, but not for those that are here. Final thing I'm going to wrap up for my raw thoughts is some quotes. I was live tweeting them. I am on Twitter at AmitIsInvesting, 755 people here. Please, if you're not on Twitter, get on Twitter, make an account, help support free speech. It's the only free speech platform that's left. And if you're there, there's a vibrant Palantir community. You can follow me there. Cisco Senior Director of Engineering says, we deploy multiple applications like WebEx across multiple geographies that all have different regulatory issues. This is an incredibly complex issue to solve, and Palantir solved it for us. This was the first presentation, and this was a really good one because the guy was a really good speaker, right? So he captured people's attention, and he was like, look, I go to Australia, I go to Latin America, I go to the United States, I go to work with the DoD in the United States that has 3 different branches, and in those 3 different branches, they have 3 more different branches. It's like a fucking tree. It's like I have so many regulatory issues I have to deal with to be able to get our product in the hands of our customers in a way that fits within the regulations they care about, that the only way I could solve this issue is if I had Palantir's Apollo, which is what the presentation was about, helping me able to do this in real time. And so that was a great presentation as well. Cisco director also said not solving these issues is an existential threat to our business, which is why we want the partner we trust. Again, going back to that theme of trust, Palantir. And I agree with that. If you don't adapt to an artificially intelligent world, your competitors will, and that will be an existential threat to your business. We talked about JD Power, Cleveland Clinic Chief Digital Officer. We worked with Palantir because we were looking for a technology product, not just someone trying to sell us an existing solution. And, this is just like music to my ears because it's what Karp has been saying for a very long time. If you're trying to sell an existing solution, you're not going to be able to really transform an organization. Maybe it takes 18 months to close a deal. Maybe it takes 2 years. Maybe it's not as scalable as something like Snowflake, but is Snowflake around in 15 years? Is an organization fundamentally transformed in a matter of weeks and not years because of the software. And if that's not the case, then I don't think that's that valuable, especially if the valuation of that is already, from a stock market perspective, way too high for a company that's producing commoditized results. Everything I heard today from people saying Palantir works with us, they're not just trying to sell us some bullshit, is that Palantir is valuable. And all we care about is actually generating alpha and value, not just some stakes and PowerPoints that will make us feel like we're doing something for the organization, but we're not. Tweeted some quotes from people. Again, another client saying that Palantir's consulting was actually the reason the technology transformed their business. This was from the Panasonic Chief Information Officer. And so we had a lot of stuff here. Last quote from HCA Healthcare saying, the difference between Palantir was their ability to understand our why, our needs, help us truly adapt a product to our business goals, which is ultimately why they went with Palantir. All right, that's it. Those are my thoughts on Palantir AIPCon. A lot more coverage to come. We will have Finance Junkies tonight and talk about the short report. So we will be discussing the short report very soon on Finance Junkies, 10 p.m. Eastern. It's a podcast I do with 3 other guys, Chris, Carlos, and Vitali, and kind of break down what the short report was trying to say. And we will keep going from there. Thank you, everybody, for being here. There were 724 people. We cracked 1,000 at one point, which was just this was pretty awesome. The Palantir live stream had like 3,000, and we had 1,000, so we had 33% of the Palantir live stream. I appreciate you all. It means the world to me. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here with me for the past 3 hours and supporting the live stream, and also just supporting a company and seeing if it can truly become a transformational company, and on this journey that we are all on to see if we can get financially independent or make a decent amount of money putting our trust and capital behind a company that we believe can truly change the world. It's a fun journey, and it's cool to see it all happen. Okay, that's it for me. I'll see you guys on the live stream tonight. Thank you so much, and see you guys in a little bit. Have a good day, everybody.